So hey guys, welcome back to my channel. What if Naruto was the legendary reincarnation of Kranos, the time god? Movie. Konohagakure Village. Snorf, snorf, sniffle, snore. The blonde, spiky-haired teen rolled over in his bed, a puddle of drool forming on his misshapen pillow. Naruto Uzumaki was oblivious to all around him, which meant that the soft knocking on his window didn't wake him from his blissful sleep. Outside, Sakura Haruno groaned into her hand which was ready to curl into a fist and smashed the glass of Naruto's window. Great, she muttered harshly, her green eyes flaring so they practically glowed in the early morning light. That idiot is still fast asleep. How are we going to get him to Tsunade-sama's office in time? The question was directed to the man crouching next to her, who was paying more attention to his book than he was to his student. Sakura rolled her eyes, Kakashi-sensei. Kakashi looked up casually from his novel, the latest in the Makeout series. Oh yes, Naruto. The Jounin blinked his one visible eye at the sleeping boy through the window screen. The book snapped shut and Kakashi leaned forward and knocked his fist against the glass once more. All he got as a response was a moan and more drool. Sakura just about had enough. The gloved hand that rested on her lips came away quick and tightened into a fist. Kakashi saw her intentions and sighed exasperatedly. He knew that persuading her otherwise was fruitless. Make sure it collapses inside, he said calmly, standing so he teetered on Naruto's outer windowsill. We don't want anyone below us to get stabbed by a shard of glass. He made a casual hand sign and was gone, teleported to the roof of the apartment building. A grateful smile crossed Sakura's face and then soon it was replaced by a mirthless smirk. Naruto Baka has sure got it in for him, Sakura thought as she focused her chakra into a closed fist. The hand turned green and buzzed with the concentrated energy. The buzzing intensified when Sakura's fist made soft contact with the window. With a deep breath, she drew back the fist and thrust it forward, the fragile glass shattering on mere contact. Her angry voice reverberated off Naruto's apartment walls and just about shook Konoha off its foundation. Naruto no Baka. Nah. Thump. The force of the shattering glass and the angry snarl that came from his comrade was enough to scare the ninja fully awake. Naruto dived for his bedside table where a kunai knife sat at the ready. He fumbled with the handle before finally being able to grasp it. The genin whirled on his heel and pointed the knife in the general direction of the screaming. His blue eyes were wide with fear and shock from the sudden bust in. Heh. Sakura-chan. That was you? He pushed the tail of his nightcap out of his eyes. The green hue that came from Sakura's energy-filled palm faded and the kunoichi dusted off the gloves. You were too deep in a sleep, how else was I supposed to wake you up? Naruto blinked once, then his whiskered face broke out into a sheepish foxy grin. Haha, I guess I didn't hear you guys knocking on my. His comment was stopped short as he stared down at the shattered glass surrounding his bed. Hey, why didn't you just knock on my front door? The soft thump made both ninja turn heads. Kakashi was back on the windowsill, obviously assessing the damage done to the apartment. Hearing Naruto's comment, Kakashi smiled under his mask. Now what would be the fun in that? He jumped from the landing and his feet crunched on the glass. Hokage-sama's waiting patiently for our arrival at her office, Naruto. I suggest you hurry and shower. Lady Tsunade is no one to be tested. Kakashi rustled in his weapons holster and brought out his book. His one eye closed contently as he smiled again. In the meantime I'll get cracking on this book. Naruto stared, still with shocked eyes at his two teammates. Kakashi-sensei was humming to himself as he turned a page of the novel. Sakura crossed her arms and glared down at him. With a gulp, Naruto stood up and scratched the back of his head. Maybe it was a wise idea to get a move on. After what seemed like eternity, Naruto walked out of the steaming bathroom. He pulled on his black and orange sweater over a white muscle shirt and zipped it up to the neck. He grinned to his teammates before reaching down, grabbing his hit I-8 and securing it onto his forehead. You guys ready? Sakura giggled and Kakashi looked up from his book to just sigh. We would be, he said, if you would just put on some pants. Sakura's giggling increased, so it was close to hysterical laughter. Naruto felt the heat from the bathroom assist in his fevered blushing. He risked a glance down and cringed. Yeah, I think that's a good idea too, he said hastily and bustled back inside. In less than a minute, the trio was off, tapping on the roofs of Konohagakure's houses and taking in the fresh morning air before anyone else in the village. Kakashi and Sakura hadn't filled Naruto in on their reason for heading over to the Hokage's office so suddenly because, well, they didn't know themselves. Good, you're all here. Tsunade folded her hands on her desk and spoke with that no-nonsense tone. Her eyebrows were creased like they were when there was a real problem at hand. Naruto was one of the first to notice. What's going on this time, Granny? Need us to settle another debt of yours? He jabbed an accusing finger at the esteemed Kunoichi, cause if you do, I'm out. Tsunade opened her mouth to disprove Naruto of his claim, but the ninja kept rambling. Aw, I see, you're trying to make excuses, heh. I'm not going to stand for it, no way, no. Bang. Will you shut your insolent mouth this once? You could see Naruto shrink deep into the shadows, a sheepish look on his foxy face. Kakashi merely closed his single eye and smiled underneath his mask, while Sakura smirked triumphantly. Ha, take that, jackass. Tsunade's aggravation faded and she slowly sank back into her chair. She folded her hands on her desk and her eyes flitted to each member of the team. Tsunade almost second-guessed herself due to the Kyuubi boy slinking in the background. She shook her head solemnly. If anyone would succeed in this mission, it would be this team right here. I have a mission for you, an A mission. Ah, the expressions on their faces. The Jounin raised an eyebrow curiously, Sakura's jade eyes widened slightly while Naruto's bulged so widely, Tsunade was afraid they would fall right off of his face. You're giving us a mission. Are you serious, Grandma? Naruto had zoomed back to the front with his teammates, eyes sparkling like a child who was offered a lollipop. He leaned curiously closer to Tsunade's desk, where the details of their mission were scripted on a piece of paper. The Hokage scowled and snatched up the paper. I can easily take it back, she snapped. After folding the mission detail in half she presented it to Kakashi who took it calmly. He opened the paper, glanced inside and folded it again, just as Naruto made a lunge for it. Not taking into account the twitching boy on the floor, Tsunade continued, this mission is of the utmost importance. It takes place in a world, I guess you could say, very unlike ours. Kakashi, I take it you remember how to get there? Kakashi nodded once. Sakura glanced between both of her teachers, dumbfounded. What? What are you talking about, Tsunade-sama? Another world. Naruto struggled back to his feet, holding his head comically. Yeah. Have you gone of your rocker for real this time? Before any incident could occur, Kakashi spoke up. We'll be on our way immediately. He turned to his two students. Get packed, he said. Bring all the necessary items and meet me at the village gate. The two young ninjas were beginning to protest when Kakashi said, later. And poofed out of the office. What do you think? Sakura shook her head at Naruto's unfinished question. I think it's better to just leave it alone for now. We'll find out soon enough anyway. The Kunoichi turned to the Hokage one last time and gave her a low bow, we won't let you down, Tsunade-sama. Naruto followed suit. Yep. Tsunade gave the two of them a wry smile. I have complete confidence in the both of you. Go now. You don't want to keep Kakashi waiting. They obediently left the office without further question. When the footsteps faded, Tsunade let out the breath she had been holding since Sakura turned her back. She leaned forward on her elbows and rubbed her temple. They better not mess this one up. Manhattan, New York. As the ninjas readied themselves for the mysterious journey ahead of them, Percy Jackson was on a journey himself. A journey in dreamland, that is. Percy found himself in a dimly lit cave facing a crude stone throne. A figure sat upon it, its face cast in shadow. At the foot of the throne a man knelt, head hanging to hide his face. The kneeling man spoke. My lord, you have to reconsider. No. Hess perfect. He will be my new host. But the Castellan boy is of no use to us now. The second shadow grew silent. How about the man Woe's offering you this deal? Do you trust him? The first erupted in dark laughter. Of course I don't. There is no such thing as trust in this business. But the first shadow's crony seemed to be racking his mind for a flaw in his master's plan. He lowered his voice and spoke urgently as if they were being overhead. Castellan already took his dip in the Styx. Hess invincible. But this other host. I will hear no more of it, the first voice thundered. He will be my new host and that is that. The dark cave shook at the sound of his strong voice. The sheer magnitude shocked Percy awake. Sitting up slowly with his heart pounding, Percy tried to make sense of this latest development. The person who sat on the throne was of course Kronos. The kneeling man. Percy had not a clue. He thought over the dream and the talk about hosts. Percy knew that Luke was to be Kronos' host, a body the Titan Lord could live in. But it looked like there would be a change of plans. Percy swung his legs off of the edge of his bed and fumbled on his bedside table for a drachma. But before he could even get a good grasp on the coin, an IM shimmered in front of him. Percy? Whoa. Percy's drachma flew out of his hand through the mist, slightly blurring the picture of Annabeth Chase. Hey Annabeth. The daughter of Athena looked as tired as he felt, but she still spoke with the same old urgency. Percy, Chiron wants you at camp right away. Something's happened. What? Annabeth pursed her lips and rubbed a hand over her eyes. Just get over here, okay? Before any more questions were asked, she waved her hand through the misty image and the connection was severed. Hanahagakure. Naruto's house. Naruto hummed a light tune to himself as he finished packing all of his things. Taking into consideration his organization skills, Naruto didn't necessarily pack but crammed all of the necessities into a tangled jumble. It took him an extra 2 minutes to squish all of his spare clothes and toiletries into the backpack, and when he finished the young ninja had to rush out of his apartment and to Konoha's gates. It didn't surprise him that the rest of his teammates were already situated. Sakura and Kakashi had their own packs at their feet and spoke to each other in what seemed to be hushed and urgent whispers. "Hey guys," Naruto chirped, approaching them. "What's all the whispering about?" Sakura whirled on Naruto. The boy made a sort of squeaking sound at the intense fire in her eyes. She still wasn't mad at him, right? Naruto tried to get words of "please don't eat me" out of his mouth, but Sakura spoke before he got a chance. "Kakashi was just explaining to me how we're going to get to this place." Naruto looked over Sakura's shoulder at his teacher. "So how are we gonna get there, sensei?" "The special jutsu," Sakura said, this time cutting the older man off. "He has some sort of scroll that will teleport us to this different world." The teleporting scroll to a different world. Naruto looked in complete bliss. "That's so cool." His joyous tone simmered at Sakura's death glare. "Why don't you look happy about this, Sakura-cha?" "Because I've never done this before," Kakashi replied evenly. The Jounin knelt on the ground and was tracing his gloved finger along the scroll's inscriptions. The scroll, riddled with unintelligible, to Naruto, writing and marks, looked like an unsolvable maze. Naruto deciphered a few phrases written in their native Japanese. "Passage to the world above a different society. A cautious warning to whoever holds this unlucky spell." "Ah, Kakashi-sensei," Naruto gulped. "I'm not liking the sound of this, either." He stole a glance at Sakura, who was crossing her arms and shaking her head with disapproval. Kakashi ignored them, reading through the rest of the scroll, and after a few breathless minutes, he stood. This shouldn't be too hard. He had that smiling look. His one visible eye closed and a crease in his mask to indicate his smiling. "Alright, I'll need you two to stand approximately 5 meters away from the scroll, that's it." Kakashi followed suit. "Now what?" Naruto asked. "An answer." Kakashi pulled a kunai. He rustled in his vest pocket and took out an explosive tag. The two teens watched in confusion as their master fastened the tag to the hilt of the weapon. "Here goes nothing," he murmured and hurled the exploding knife at the scroll. With expert accuracy, the kunai dug itself through the thin papery scroll and into the ground. The explosive tag ignited and Kakashi barked, "Run to the scroll and put your hand on the kunai." Sakura was the first to recover from the utter shock. "Well, be blown to bits. I'm too young to die." Naruto joined in. As they complained, the sparks ate away at the explosive tag. "Just do it." Kakashi was already at the kunai, gripping the hilt. Naruto and Sakura just reached the scroll when everything in a 10-meter radius burst into flame. New York. Jackson apartment. Percy Jackson placed his last neatly, kinda, folded shirt in a battered pack. After Annabeth's urgent iris, he didn't hesitate to get all of his things ready for Camp Half-Blood. After scribbling a quick note to his mother, who was still in bed, Percy snuck out of his apartment, down the elevator and out of his building. The formidable wall of morning traffic sounds hit Percy like a bulldozer. He would never get used to the rush hour orchestra for as long as he lived. Percy waved down one of the small, yellow New York taxi cabs and gave the driver the usual directions to Camp Half-Blood. While the cabbie took his sweet time through the sea of SUVs, limos and other impatient taxi cabs, Percy slumped in his seat and picked at a loose seat thread. He thought about Annabeth's message. What could be so important? An ominous feeling settled into his gut. Did something bad happen at camp? Was Kronos on the move again? All negative thoughts swarmed in his consciousness until he felt the taxi slow to a stop. The cabbie pulled the chewed toothpick from between his yellow teeth. "Hey, you sure about this, Junior? Ain't nothing here." Percy placed the money on the passenger seat and exited the cab before the middle-aged man finished his inquiry. Percy watched the taxi pull away from the farm road before he started climbing Half-Blood Hill. Percy reached the crest of the hill. Peleus, the guard dragon, looked curiously at the returning son of Poseidon and snorted out a plume of gray smoke smelling of wood. Percy smiled and walked the last few feet to his beloved home and was pushed back by an invisible force. Percy smashed into the ground. Groaning, he propped himself back up on his elbows. "What the?" he muttered. He stood and inched closer to the boundary once again. He reached a hand to touch Camp's invisible shield. A shock rushed from the boundary up his finger and expanded through his whole body. Percy shook and fell again. He blinked stars from his eyes. "Percy?" Looking up, the son of Poseidon saw 3 figures running galloping up to the boundary. Despite the numb feeling in his hands and feet, Percy smiled. Annabeth, Grover and even Chiron were soon standing on the other side of the camp's invisible boundary. Murmuring under his breath, Chiron placed a hand on the barrier and proclaimed, "I, Chiron, allow Perseus Jackson to enter camp." With a shudder, Percy felt the barrier give way. His friends were at him in an instant and pulled him to his feet. Percy wobbled for a moment. He blinked the after effects of the border shock away from his eyes and shook it from his body. Percy looked around. "Hey guys." They all exchanged greetings, and Percy followed them warily into Camp Half-Blood. One safely next to Thalia's pine, he asked, "What's up with the border?" Annabeth turned to him. Her face looked deeply troubled like the way she looked when she aimed him in the first place. "We needed to enhance its powers a bit more," she said. We can't let just anybody in anymore, not even demigods we can't undoubtedly trust. This worried Percy. What in the world did they mean? He cast a confused look in Chiron's direction, but the centaur cast his dark eyes solemnly to outside camp. Grover spoke up, Percy, demigods are leaving us for the Titan Lord. They're disappearing and sneaking off. He fiddled with the hem of his shirt. We can't stop them from leaving, but we can stop them from re-entering. They might have been turned into spies. Annabeth broke out into a frantic pace back and forth from Thalia's pine to Percy and back again. Her brow was furrowed in a frustrated, thoughtful expression. We have roughly 50 left here. By the end of the month we might be the only ones left. Annabeth. Chiron's sharp voice made the Athenian lightly jump. Chiron looked at her sternly. We have a very good group of dedicated demigods. We will not be left totally defenseless. Chiron clopped up to the girl and placed a hand on her shoulder. This problem will be taken care of. How? Grover chirped. We will find a way, Chiron replied firmly. He then took what he said back. Actually, we already have a way. That is why I called you here, Percy. Annabeth dug her shoe into the ground. Yeah. Chiron thinks he found a way to turn all of this around. Percy looked to each of the people in turn. A way to fix hundreds of demigods leaving and betraying them to Kronos. How was that even possible? The question was clear in his expression, and Chiron answered with an almost mischievous sparkle in his eyes. Ninjas, he said. He was met with complete silence for a few moments. Then laughter erupted. Ninjas? Grover asked in between fits of chortling. Chiron smiled a bit at their reaction. They do exist, you know. Well yeah, Percy said, in Japanese comic books and movies. Chiron, ninja just don't exist. And if they do, where do you find them? Annabeth crossed her arms in that defiant way she had. Chiron chuckled. Yeah, I'd be surprised, he said. The centaur started clopping down the hill. The three others followed him. Kronos has been dormant in action for quite some time, he said. But this sudden burst in demigod traders has me thinking that the Titan Lord has made a big move and it most possibly made him seem like a better and stronger ally to some half-bloods. They stopped in front of the big house, letting all of the information settle in for a moment. Annabeth spoke slowly, I still don't understand. A dream surged back into Percy's mind. I had a dream. He blurted. At everyone's, except Chiron's, curious looks inviting him to share, Percy relayed the vision. And Kronos said he made a deal with this other guy about another host. His crony didn't seem too thrilled. Another host? Annabeth asked incredulously. We saw just a few weeks ago that Kronos resides in. She stopped. Luke now. She shook herself, he can't just make a deal with another guy and get a new host. Chiron cleared his throat. That, my dear child, is where the line blurs. This new guy you speak of is one of them. One of the ninjas. A bad one, mind you. Chiron walked slowly to the front of the big house with his hands behind his back. His snowy tail swished back and forth thoughtfully. A bad ninja who claims to be able to do this little exchange. Kronos will take this man's host and vice versa. But Chiron, that still makes no sense. Grover clopped up and leaned against a porch railing. Why would Kronos want another host? And why does this guy want Luke? That is the question, isn't it, Grover? Okay, so let's say this whole story is plausible and that ninjas are really coming here. Why? Annabeth joined Grover, still with a disbelief in her voice. They have been tracking this man making the deal with the Titan Lord for quite some time. He is one of their main adversaries. I thought you three would need the insight when going on the quest with them to figure out more. This took them by surprise. And when will they be here? Annabeth asked slowly, walking into the big house as Chiron opened it for them. The centaur stroked his scruffy beard. In about an hour. An hour? All three of them blurted. New York. Central Park. Naruto opened his eyes to complete darkness, his hands flew to his face, and he pinched his cheek. Still alive, good. He thrust out his hands in front of him and met another figure. Hey. Sakura called out. Oops. Hey, are you two alright over there? Naruto's head whipped around at his sensei's voice. There was a grunt, a sound of something heavy being moved, and light streamed into Naruto's vision. He put his hands over his eyes and blinked. When his eyes adjusted, Naruto found that the three of them stood in a ditch which had been covered by a large boulder. Kakashi dusted the dirt off of his hands and saluted them with 2 fingers. Yo. Kakashi-sensei, Sakura said a bit hesitantly. She pulled on her medic nin gloves and began to climb out of the ditch, using the crags in the hollowed-out ground as a foothold. Where are we? Kakashi hefted Sakura up and pulled Naruto out of the ditch as well. The Jounin pushed the boulder back in place. Is this that other place Tsunade talked about? The question came from Naruto. Kakashi merely nodded. He looked around and the 2 teenagers followed his example. As far as Naruto could see, they haven't left Konohagakure, or, at least, they stood in a different part of it. The trees still loomed above them and they stood in a clearing much like the one just a few minutes ago. But apparently, Sakura could tell the place was different. Where are we? She asked. This isn't Konoha. Or Sunagakure or the village hidden in the mist or anything ninja-like. Where are they? Kakashi was crouching, shuffling in his bag. A vein throbbed in Sakura's head. Don't be reading your make-out books at a time like this. Kakashi held up a hand silently and kept rifling. Sakura let out a puff of angry air. Naruto tapped her shoulder. What do you mean? He asked. What do you mean, what do you mean? This place is otherworldly. Before Naruto could question her anymore, Sakura pointed up and over beyond the trees. Naruto stared. She was right. When he looked past all the greenery, Naruto saw specks of silver. Trees made of metal. Naruto couldn't understand it. The same time the thought processed through his mind, an angry sound reached his ears. It happened again and again. What's that? He whispered harshly. That, Naruto, is called a taxi horn. Kakashi came up from his pack and held out a bundle of clothes. He tossed them each a hat and wrapped his own face, or at least the mask part, with a white gauze. He then untied his leaf headband, much to his students' dismay, and replaced it with one of the white ball caps. Naruto finally found his voice through the shock. Why did you take off your hit I-8, Kakashi? He read the print on Kakashi's new headgear. I heart New York. Naruto gave his sensei a look. What's in New York? New York, Kakashi sighed. What's in New York? The city. What's the village? Oh. Kakashi cleared his throat. The people in this village dress differently than us, and we need to blend in as much as possible. He reached over and poked Naruto on the headband. Which means that has to come off. He sensed Naruto's rant on how the headband symbolized who they were, and he raised a hand. If it's that important to you, tie it on your arm, but keep it under one of those jackets. He motioned to Sakura's and Naruto's own bundle of clothing. In a matter of seconds, Naruto and Sakura were in their new attire. Naruto wore a blue windbreaker with the same I Heart New York logo on the back to replace his signature orange and black jacket. He kept the pants and didn't bother to wear a goofy cap. Sakura wore a baseball hat and a windbreaker like Naruto's, but hers was pink. Kakashi stripped his Jounin vest for a black jacket. At Kakashi's order, the two ninja followed him through the clearing and a small forest. They came out to a blast of sudden sound and odd-looking contraptions. Sakura and Naruto cowered near the forest, yearning for their home where they could hide out on tree limbs away from anything different. Kakashi waved a hand and hailed a moving carriage looking dingy. Naruto heard Kakashi vaguely explain about cars and nodded dumbly as he got in. The boy had a million questions swimming around his mind. Don't worry, the Jounin mumbled next to him. Our clients will explain everything. Another numb nod. The driver of the car turned to them. She smiled sweetly, almost sickly, at them. Hello, said she. I'm Kelly. Where is your destination? Naruto and Sakura dived to the right while Kakashi took the left. Kelly hissed angrily. Die. And she lunged for the two teens. Both of them knew what to do. They made the sign of the tiger, and when Kelly's fangs made contact, they poofed into logs. The next thing she knew, Naruto was behind her, fist held high. Beat this? The punch hit his mark, but he was thrown back. What in the? Kelly let out shrill laughter. It will not work, mere mortal. Only celestial bronze can destroy me. Oh yeah, came Sakura's voice. Bomb. The ground shook and broke with the force of Sakura's strong fist. Kelly stumbled, and Sakura took this to her advantage. She clenched her hand and focused so much energy into it that it glowed green. Sakura ran to Kelly and instead of punching her, she just placed her hand gently on her arm and leg. And how do you think that will help you? Kelly asked. But soon she got her answer. When she tried to move her arms, her knee twitched. When she tried to move her legs, her head turned. Sakura had disrupted her nervous system. It's all yours. The kunoichi announced happily. Naruto, who had recovered his wits, stood next to his sensei. You thinking what I'm thinking? He asked. Kakashi closed his eye. It's been so long. But he reached up to his forehead protector and pulled it up. His left eye was bloody red. It had weird black markings around it. Sharingan, he said. Naruto grinned and placed two of his fingers horizontally behind two other fingers that were vertical. Shadow Clone Jutsu. In about a second another blonde appeared. Naruto had made an exact copy of himself. The real Naruto put out his right palm and the clone moved his hands frantically over it. Slowly, energy swirled and swirled in Naruto's hand, making a blue sphere. The sphere enlarged until it took both Naruto and his clone to hold it. Meanwhile Kakashi moved his hands, making various hand signs. The air around him began to crackle and his right hand started to form lightning. Soon he had an uncontrollable blade of energy and lightning. He nodded to Naruto. You first. Naruto dashed toward the monster, clone at his side. He held up a swirling ball of energy, cried Adama Rasengan, and impaled Kelly. When the blonde looked back, there was a hole in her. But to his surprise, it began to close. What? Before Kelly could explain, it was Kakashi's turn. He madly dashed to Kelly and slammed his lightning blade into her face. Nothing. How the heck are we gonna beat this thing? Naruto asked, dumbfounded. I used up all my energy on my Adama Rasengan. And my jutsu is wearing off too, Sakura said. Look. It was true, Kelly's nervous system was getting back intact. She stood and extended her claws. I think I've had enough fun, she said, advancing toward them. But now it's the end of the line. I don't think so. Came a new voice. The three ninja looked up and saw three people who were about Naruto and Sakura's age running down the hill. Percy, Annabeth and Grover. Yes, Kelly hissed happily. I will have a meal of mortals and demigods. The three ninja took this chance and jumped back. Sakura drew a kunai. Let's get her. She said. Naruto and Kakashi nodded, drew kunai and charged along with the other three. Percy swung Riptide at the monster, but Kelly ducked and Percy's sword came in contact with Naruto's kunai. Get back. The demigod yelled. No way. Naruto replied smiling, I have some unfinished business with this. Impausa. Annabeth yelled from a distance. She took her knife and brought it down on Kelly's back. She disintegrated into yellow dust. After the whole mayhem was over, the three campers came up to the ninja and asked, how'd you get in contact with Kelly? Well, Naruto said, tapping his chin, we needed a ride, we had to find this. Sakura clamped her hand over his mouth. You idiot. She yelled. You almost gave us away. But they did save our lives. Kakashi said. He pulled the forehead protector back over his eye before he turned to the three, we are here on some serious business, and we're looking for Camp Half-Blood. Annabeth took in a sharp breath, you're the ninja Chiron sent for. Naruto wrenched himself away from Sakura's death grip. How'd you know? We're some of the campers. Grover said. He pointed to each of them as he introduced, that's Annabeth, Percy, and Grover. Kakashi gave a small nod. Kakashi Haddock. Sakura smiled and waved, Sakura Haruno. And Naruto pointed to himself and gave a broad smile, and Naruto Uzumaki. The number one. Knucklehead ninja. Sakura finished. Not. Naruto yelled. R2. She yelled back. While they exchanged nods and R2's Kakashi asked, so where is this Chiron that assigned us this mission? Grover and Percy were too busy watching the other two ninja bicker, but Annabeth said, Hess up at Half-Blood Hill, but he said that you guys weren't coming until later. The old man shrugged, well, change of plans, we need to get to this Chiron and fast. He looked over at his two students and sighed, Naruto, Sakura. The two abruptly stopped. It's time to go. The two backed away from each other and followed Kakashi and the three demigods as they trudged up Half-Blood Hill, waiting to see what would happen next. After a few minutes, the group of demigods and ninjas reached the top of Half-Blood Hill. Stop, Percy ordered as the camp came in full view. He turned to Annabeth, are the borders? She shrugged, I don't know, try it. The boy shook his head frantically, no way am I getting knocked off my feet by that thing again. The three ninja looked at them. What's wrong? Sakura asked. The demigods looked at each other, trying to find an excuse. They haven't told them the real truth about Camp Half-Blood and the gods. The borders. Grover started and looked at Percy. Percy took up the lie, you need. He glanced at Annabeth. Passes, she said in a split second. You need passes to get through to the camp. Naruto raised an eyebrow, but I don't see anybody accepting passes up here. He moved toward the border. Wait. Grover called. But it was too late. Naruto got so close to the border that it pushed him back, sending him skidding across the grass. Naruto. Sakura and Kakashi yelled. The blonde sat up, rubbing his sore head. Ow. Kakashi looked at the three demigods questioningly, just who are you people? Before they could lie or confess, a sound was heard like the thundering of hooves. Chiron cantered up, a quiver slung across his back and his bow around his neck. He didn't even bother changing into wheelchair form. Kakashi staggered, Hess. The horse. Naruto, who was standing up, fell down again in surprise. The centaur didn't reply to that insult, instead he turned on Percy, Annabeth and Grover. What in Zeus' name were you thinking, charging an impulse like that? Not waiting for their reply, he spoke up to the sky. I, Chiron, give you permission to enter camp. Thunder shook the hill. What happened? Naruto asked, as Sakura helped him from the ground. Chiron looked over at the ninja, are you Tsunade's ninja? They stood erect and placed a hand to their forehead in salute, shinobi of the hidden leaf at your service. I am Kakashi Haddock, said Kakashi, calmly. And I am Sakura Haruno, Sakura chimed in. But Naruto just stood there, staring blankly at Chiron. The centaur seemed to notice this and cocked his head to one side, everything all right young man? The blonde shook himself out of his trance and said stupidly, are you a horse? Before Sakura could punch the fool, Chiron cleared his throat and replied, boy, I am a centaur. Now Sakura looked confused, a centaur. Aren't those imaginary? Chiron glanced around and flicked his tail nervously, it's not safe to talk here. Why not? Naruto asked. The centaur didn't answer, he gestured to the demigods, you three, he said. Take them down to the big house, he'll be there soon. And he was gone before they could ask why he was leaving. Well, I guess we should get going, said Annabeth after a few seconds of silence. She went to the front and led the group back down the hill, toward the camp. Naruto cautiously swiped his hand through the air just to make sure that it won't throw him back again. But, he stuttered. A few minutes ago, the air was an invisible barricade. But he followed without a question. Half-blood sure was a strange sight. Sakura and Naruto's eyes widened as they saw the moving strawberry fields. I repeat, moving strawberry fields. They passed a cluster of cabins that made a U right in the middle of the camp. A few feet from that was a beautiful open-air pavilion. Finally in a distance, they saw a big old white house. Percy turned to them, that's the big house. Obviously Sakura thought. They entered through the oak doors and immediately they were bombarded by the smell of chocolate chip cookies. Naruto's eyes were half-lidded and he had to fight the urge to run into the kitchen. It's not what you think they are, Grover said, reading the ninja's thoughts. It's just that new air freshener. It makes the air smell whatever you want it to smell like. Naruto's stomach grumbled and he groaned. Don't worry, you'll get to eat after we fill you in, said Grover. They made their way to the living room. The three demigods crashed on a red couch and the ninja sat on 3 different recliners. What do you mean fill us in? Asked Sakura. Yeah, we already have our mission. Paper thingy, Naruto added. But their sensei scratched his mask-covered chin. There is something strange about this whole thing though. They'll say, Naruto agreed. That horse dude. Tyron, Annabeth corrected. Yeah, he's not really a centaur is he? Annabeth bit her lip and turned to her friends who were shifting nervously on the couch. That's what we had to tell you, she said. Annabeth glanced around the room. Those myths that you mentioned, the centaur and that monster you fought. The Impausa? Asked Kakashi. Annabeth nodded, there. Real, finished Percy. The myths of the monsters and the Greek gods are real. Silence filled the room, then after a few moments Naruto burst into laughter. Aha. Nice one Perse. Greek gods are real. Real funny. He chortled some more, then looked around. No one else was laughing. He shot a look at Percy, they're real. He nodded and Grover proceeded to explain, just as the early ninjas moved west, so did the Greek gods. He explained it with as much detail as he could muster. He included the bits about Chronos rising, but he couldn't bring himself to talk about his old friend Luke. Interesting, he said. The mission statement only says that we need to observe the camp for a while. Looks like I was mistaken. Percy nodded, you need to help protect this camp. Naruto fell back into his recliner like he'd just run 1,000 miles. An air rank mission, wow. So we need to wait for Chiron to explain our true mission? Asked Kakashi. The 3 campers nodded. The thought struck Sakura, she sat straight as she asked, if Camp Half-Blood is a training place for heroes, what does that make you guys? The other 2 ninja also sat forward, interested. Percy beat his friends to it as he said, we're half-bloods, half-mortal, half-god. Naruto's jaw dropped. Grover held up his hands, I'm not a half-blood. He kicked off his shoes, under them were cloven hooves. Sakura shrieked. Yower. Yower. The satyr, Grover shrugged. Hey. Hey. Naruto yelled. Who are you guys? He gestured to Annabeth and Percy. Parents, godly parents I mean. This time, Annabeth was first. My mother is Athena, the goddess of wisdom and war. Percy nodded and said, and my dad is Poseidon, god of the sea. And all the ninja could do was stare as Chiron clopped into the room. Tyron gazed quizzically at the ninja's odd looks. I can see you told them, he said at last. Kakashi turned to the old centaur, looks like our mission is not what it seems, Chiron-sama. Doesn't that sound weird? I'm sorry that I lied to the leaf, Chiron apologized. But the camp is in terrible peril and we needed the best protection that we could afford. It's alright, we'll just need to contact Tsunade and make sure she gives us the okay before we can carry out this mission. What? Naruto jumped up from his seat. We need to ask permission from Granny to keep this mission. The elite ninja raised an eyebrow, she is our village leader. Naruto looked about to protest, but he sat back down. Tyron was pondering how Kakashi and his troop would contact their leader. Then it hit him. I'm not certain that his will work, but how about an IM? The what? Sakura and Naruto inquired in unison. Tyron smiled, that's right, you haven't IM'd anyone yet. He proceeded to leave the room and turned around, come now. Don't be afraid. The 3 stood and glanced at the 2 demigods and the satyr. They all nodded encouragingly and the ninja followed the centaur reluctantly out of the room. Once the ninja were out of sight, Grover gave a small smile. They seem cool. Yeah, Percy said nodding, I wonder what they go through at their village. The other 2 agreed. I wonder what's going to happen now? Annabeth asked. Outside the living room, Tyron turned to Naruto, Sakura, and Kakashi. Can any of you make a rainbow? The rainbow, Naruto started. No matter, said Chiron. He beckoned to them once more, to the backyard. They followed him once more. Tyron a button near the door on the back porch and the sprinkler started. In a few seconds a light rainbow appeared. The centaur took out a gold coin and threw it into the rainbow. Oh, Iris, goddess of the rainbow, please accept my offering. Then he turned to the ninja, say the person you want to contact and where that person is. Kakashi stepped forward, Tsunade of the Leaf Village. Slowly the mist formed a more solid shape and soon the face of Tsunade appeared. Tsunade-sama. Sakura yelled in alarm. The Hokage turned and stared at them, what the? Tyron came in and waved, greetings Tsunade, I am Chiron, of Camp Half-Blood. She cocked her head sideways, I see is the mission going well? Well Naruto started. Tyron interrupted, there seems to be a change in plans madam. And he explained. I see, she murmured, well, of course you can go along with this mission. We're counting on you guys. Tyron bowed, I thank you. And he waved his hand across the mist. Well that was easy, Naruto happily declared after blinking twice. Maybe too easy Kakashi thought. Tyron started back into the house, if you want the rest of your mission. The ninja followed right away. They walked back to the living room and sat down. Sakura was the first to speak, our mission has changed right? So what's our new objective? To protect the camp from the next attack by the Titan Lord, Chiron replied calmly. And that's? Naruto trailed off. Names are powerful young man. Kakashi straightened, we have a right to know, he said. Tyron hesitated, afraid to say his father's name, but Percy had another idea Luke. Annabeth shot him a look, but didn't say a word. Percy continued, Luke has tried a lot of times to destroy the camp so he could get to Olympus. Why can't he just get to Olympus directly? Sakura asked. Won't it just be easier, instead of wasting time here? Percy heaved a sigh, he wants me. What? The two teen ninjas said. This time Chiron took over, I was given a prophecy that the next son or daughter of the big three gods, Hades, Zeus and Poseidon, would be a great weapon and would choose the fate of the world when he or she turned 16. Kakashi looked over to the son of Poseidon, and how old are you? Percy looked sheepish as if turning older was his fault, I turned 16 in 1 month. Sakura pursed her lips, this is bad. So we have to protect this boy, Kakashi asked. Not necessarily, he doesn't need protecting the camp altogether though said Chiron. The elite ninja nodded, we understand. Before he stood and left, a new problem struck him, Chiron-sama are the rest of the campers aware of our presence? Chiron smiled and closed his eyes, I've thought about that matter as well, and I decided to put Naruto and Sakura as campers, and you as a new camp counselor. At this, Grover jumped up, but for them to be campers, they need to be half-bloods. We could fake this for a while, the centaur reassured him. Then he placed a finger on his chin, which cabin to put the two in is the problem though. We could put them in the Hermes cabin as undetermined, Annabeth suggested. Tyron shook his head, we need them to be close to the three of you. After a few seconds he spoke again, how about we put the girl Sakura isn't it? Yes, Sakura with Annabeth in the Athena cabin, and the young man, Naruto in the Hermes cabin is determined, we can't put him in with Percy, because that could cause an uproar, and it will put him in danger as well. At this, Naruto waved a hand, aw, come on, I eat danger for but Kakashi interrupted him. That would be perfect, he said. And I would stay in the big house, there are many rooms. Chiron smiled. Understood. Kakashi stood up and bowed, arigato, thank you. The other two ninja repeated the action. Annabeth can you take Sakura to cabin 6, Chiron asked. Sure Chiron, the daughter of Athena replied. She motioned to the Kunoichi, come with me. Sakura waved to her comrade and sensei, see you guys later, and followed Annabeth out. Grover and Percy Chiron started. Sure, they both replied in unison. Naruto did the same as Sakura, and soon he was gone. Kakashi bowed again, may I leave my bags here? I want to explore the camp, you know for security purposes. Chiron nodded, go ahead, but keep yourself hidden, remember the campers do not know about you yet. The Jounin acknowledged him and exited the big house. He jumped up into the branches of the nearest tree and crouched, surveying his surroundings. How interesting and he leaped off from tree to tree, concealing himself within the shadows. Sakura and Annabeth exited the big house and started to walk down the driveway. The Athena cabin is a great place, Annabeth was saying, it's a bit crowded, but hey it's home. The Kunoichi smiled. It sounds like you've been here for a pretty long time. The daughter of Athena pursed her lips and forced a grin, yeah, a pretty long time. They walked the rest of the way in an eerie but somewhat comfortable silence. But that silence was broken when they started nearing the cabins. Pugasi flew up and about, their riders waving from the sky. Excited, younger children squealed happily as they chased each other around the pavilion. This place is bigger than I thought, Sakura wondered. They're too vulnerable for a direct attack, this is going to be a pretty hard mission. Annabeth seemed to see the look of doubt and worry on Sakura's face for she said, trust me, camp is so much safer than it looks. Without waiting for an answer, she ran to one of the cabins, Sakura sprinting to keep up. Once she stopped, Annabeth stood on front of the cabin and said proudly, cabin 6, the Athena cabin. The Kunoichi looked at the grey building. It had a silver owl standing watch at the door, with onyx eyes that reminded her painfully of Sasuke. The doors were pushed open, revealing the whole new place inside. Workbenches were scattered all over the room, diagrams and charts were in the beds, on the floor, and plastered on the ceiling. The daughter of Athena turned to Sakura, her face red. Haha, looks like we didn't have a chance to clean up yet, huh? Sakura gave a small laugh. No, I kinda like it here. The pink hair thought she heard Annabeth sigh with relief. Then. Since most of my siblings aren't year-rounders, I guess they won't mind if you use their bunk for a while. Sakura plopped her bag on a bed that Annabeth indicated and said, would you mind if you could show me around if I'm going to be camper here, I might as well know where everything is. Sure, Annabeth replied. They exited the cabin, and Annabeth motioned to the whole set of cabins as a whole, of course these are all of the cabins. Yaur put in the one that has your Olympian parent. But in your case that's not an issue. Then she pointed the dining pavilion, that's where we have our meals and sometimes the occasional parties. Annabeth took Sakura to most of the places in camp, the forest, the Pegasus stable, the armory, and the last place they visited. This is the canoe lake I like to visit here when I have a problem. I always like to think it through here. Annabeth sat on the dock and stared out. Looks like you're having a problem now, Sakura said, joining her. How long have you been here at camp, Annabeth? The daughter of Athena sighed and picked up a necklace that had 8 clay beads on it. Since I was 7, Grover was the one who went with me to camp, but on the way we found 2 other half-bloods, Thalia, she closed her eyes, and Luke. The Kenoich's eyes widened. Luke, the one who gave himself up to the Titan Lord Kronos. Annabeth opened her eyes and just kept staring at the lake. He didn't. Isn't that what Chiron-sama told us? But he didn't, she whispered under her breath. He didn't. Kronos took him over by force. Luke would never give himself up. I know him. Sakura smiled. You really care about him, don't you? How could I not? Annabeth said, then blushed. I mean, it's not like. The Kenoichi laughed. You want to save him, I understand that, but I have a hunch that you sort of have some lingering feeling toward him. Annabeth shot her a look, but how? This time Sakura gazed out at the lake, cause it's happened to me before, I lost someone, like you have. Annabeth didn't say a word, so Sakura continued, his name was Sasuke, Sasuke-cha. She smiled softly, savoring the memory. All of the girls were always around him trying to win his attention. He had the talent, the strength, and the looks of a great ninja. I was considered lucky when I was in his team, along with Naruto of course. But Sakura's smile disappeared when we were taking a survival test. A man by the name of Orochimaru ambushed us. He bit Sasuke, leaving a curse mark on his neck. From then Sasuke was never the same. He became obsessed with power, and one day tears were playing at Sakura's eyes. He left. He abandoned the village and joined Orochimaru. Naruto tried to get him back, but it didn't work out too well. She straightened. That's the reason Naruto and I have been training. We have to get Sasuke back. Bring him back to the village. Annabeth wore a sad look of sympathy and understanding. I'm so sorry. Sakura smiled, but that's why me and Naruto are training, remember? She looked up at the clouds, and I'm sure that you and Percy can accomplish the same thing with Luke. Annabeth made an angry huffing sound. I don't think so. Percy's always regarding Luke as the bad guy. He doesn't want to save him. Has such a seaweed brain sometimes. But you believe in him, don't you? The daughter of Athena didn't even hesitate as she answered firmly, of course I do. Sakura jumped up and slammed a fist into the palm of her hand. That settles it then. You guys can get Luke back for sure. At that moment a conch horn sounded. Sakura looked around in confusion. It's time for dinner. Annabeth said. She stood up and motioned for Sakura to follow her. Thanks by the way, she said. The Kenoichi frowned. For what? The advice, you know, with Luke. A smirk blossomed on Sakura's face. Not a problem, she said. Now where's the dining pavilion? While Sakura and Annabeth were taking their tour, Naruto and Percy were also busy. The ninja, Sator and Camper walked together, exchanging in light conversation. So, Naruto was saying, his hands behind his head, what's up with the cabins? It depends on who our Olympian parent is, Percy explained. Naruto kept his stride but cocked his head. Then why can't I be with you and pretend to be a son of Poseidon too? Poseidon, Percy corrected, and you can't because it would be too dangerous. He seemed to think about it for a moment and grinned sheepishly. How's it dangerous again? Grover bleated in amusement. Now I see why Sakura calls you the #1 knucklehead ninja. But Naruto didn't seem to hear as he said, Oh, nothing. It's dangerous because my dad is one of the major gods. If Kronos thought that you were a son of Poseidon too, that would call for some serious trouble, Percy said. The genin nodded in understanding but kept quiet. This Kronos guys must be a hell of a threat. So, he said, changing the subject, is camp a nice place? Percy kicked at rocks as they trudged along. It's like my second home, I've found friends here, it has really nice weather, and the games are awesome, so yeah, to me it's one of the best places in the world. They reached the Hermes cabin and from behind the door they heard yelling and slamming. Naruto gulped. Are you sure this is the right cabin? Percy didn't make eye contact as he responded, that's what I thought too, and he opened the door. Naruto yelped as something flew past him, nearly hitting him in the eye. Hey. The young boy ran forth and pushed Naruto out of way, retrieving his toy. Watch out, mister. Came a voice from inside. POW. The ninja fell to the ground in IM style. Next to him was a paper airplane. Ah. Naruto picked up the paper and crumpled it up and threw it back into the room, fire welling in his eyes. Watch where you throw that thing, you brat. And the little boy started to cry. Then, a burly boy about 17 walked out cracking his knuckles threateningly. Hey, he rumbled. You the one messing with my little brother? Hey no. Bang. POW. Slam. Naruto lay on the ground with various bumps and bruises. Grover and Percy dragged him to the showers. You've gotta do better than that, Naruto said, Percy, feeling a strange dose of deja vu. Once Naruto washed his cuts and dressed in his orange-black jacket and matching pants, but leaving his forehead protector off, stumbled out of the shower. Like you did any better on your first day, he quipped and started walking again. While walking they saw Annabeth and Sakura exit the Athena cabin and walk off in another direction. AN. Wow, it took that short time for Naruto to get beat up. Hey Annabeth. Percy called but they kept going, not paying him any attention. Guess she didn't hear me. Naruto squinted in that direction too. Huh. Looks like you girlfriend and Sakura-chan are headed someplace. Percy nodded, yeah I guess. Hey. Naruto cold in a loud cackle. She's not my girlfriend. Grover bit his lip to keep from laughing along. It's not funny, Whiskers. Percy snapped at Naruto who was cackling as loud as thunder. Whiskers, Naruto thought, running a finger along one of the black lines that were on his cheeks. Gee. Even I can do better than that, and that's saying something. You want some of the salty breath? He challenged in return. Before Percy could counter-attack, a voice sounded from up above. Naruto, I leave you alone for a while, and you already get in a fight with the person we're supposed to protect. It was Kakashi. His eye closed, he snapped make-out tactics shut and jumped down from a towering tree. Hami, you always jumpin', don't you, Kakashi-sensei? Good thing I did before you caused uproar. He glanced at the two campers. It'll take him from here. We're very sorry about that, Kakashi sir, mumbled Grover. From under his mask Kakashi looked like he was smiling. Naruto's the one who is supposed to be apologizing. And he led the ninja away. Grover shot his best friend a glare. Percy saw it. What? He demanded. Don't go picking fights like that, the satyr warned. That's always been one of your problems. Yeah? Percy said looking down. Well, this Naruto guy seems to have a knack for it too. And he walked away as the conch sounded. Grover was left there and a smile flickered across his face. That's why I have a feeling that you and him are going to be best friends, and he ran off to the dining pavilion. The two girls ran to catch up with their cabin only consisting of about 10 people. One of Annabeth's sisters, Sandra, ran up to them. Hey Annabeth, you didn't tell me that we had a new sibling. Sakura looked over, came face to face with the same fierce gray eyes that Annabeth had. Hello, she said a little timidly. Another sibling, Malcolm, came to join in. Yeah, he said, I cold shown her around. Annabeth put on a fake and playful scowl at her brother and sister. Well, first of all, you guys were all at the arena, and second, you old scared poor Sakura to death with your happiness. We're not that bad, Malcolm objected. Tsuur, Annabeth continued, you old attack Sakura with millions of questions, and Sandra, you would drag her everywhere and show her the whole camp at least 10 times. The four of them, Sakura included, started in a fit of laughter. Until Jackie, their senior counselor, and who was also more serious than the rest of her siblings, shot them a look. All of the cabins sat at their designated tables and waited for Chiron to give the evening announcements. The old centaur stood and stretched his arms in a gesture of greeting. Welcome campers to another beautiful night at Camp Half-Blood. Today we have received a great blessing from the gods and new camp counselor. At this the whole pavilion broke into surprised murmurs. Not bothering to ask for silence, Chiron announced, please extend a warm welcome to Sir Kakashi Hatake. The elite ninja stood, lowering make-out tactics. His visible eye closed and hand palm up, and a silent off-camper's eyes widened. No clapping was made and the crickets chirped in the background. Kakashi's eye opened. Well. Nervous applause broke out and Kakashi sat down, concluding that the campers were utterly hopeless without their help. Chiron's tail flicked embarrassed. He dismissed the campers to the dinner table and they went off, filling their plates. Malcolm said when the Athena cabin was back at their table. That counselor sure looked weird. What was up with that mask he was wearing? Maybe he has an eyesight problem, Sandra offered. I guess you can say that, Sakura said, then mentally covered her mouth. Oops. What do you mean, Sakura? Do you know the new counselor? Sandra's gray eyes were bugging out. The Kunoichi turned red, and no. I was just supporting your idea. To Sandra it didn't sound like a question, so she just shrugged and went back to her apple pie. Sakura leaned over and whispered to Annabeth, still keeping an eye on the other two who were engrossed in their own conversation, that was pretty close, don't you agree? She then risked a glance in her direction and found that the daughter of Athena wasn't listening to her at all. She was glancing over her shoulder. Sakura followed her gaze and saw. Annabeth was looking over to another table far back. How odd, there was only one person at that table. Oh. It was the son of Poseidon, Percy. Hey, Sakura said a little bit louder. Annabeth jumped a little and turned to look at her. Oh, what were you saying, Sakura? Why were you looking over there at Percy? At this, Annabeth's face glowed red and she averted her gaze. What are you talking about? Before Sakura could answer, Malcolm jumped in laughing. That yeah, Annabeth has been crushing on the ocean boy for a long time. Oh, mother doesn't approve, Sandra added. If possible, the daughter of Athena's face seemed to glow ever redder. Shut up. Even though he was older, Malcolm couldn't help but sing out, Annabeth and Percy sitting in a tree kissing. Whap. Malcolm was on the floor. Didn't I tell you to shut up? Annabeth was steaming mad and she marched away to the cabin. Haha, I had to add a bit of humor in this chapter XD. Poseidon table, Annabeth and Percy sitting in a tree kissing. Grover, who had recently joined his best friend, grimaced, looks like someone's talking about you. The son of Poseidon blushed, I dunno what they're talking about. Well, they're talking about you, and he was interrupted when Naruto plopped down across from them. So, I was right about the girlfriend thing. No, you weren't, Percy snapped. Why are you even sitting here in the first place? You're supposed to sit at Yukabin's table, camp rules. The ninja scoffed, whatever, those other kids hate me anyway, so what's the point sitting with them? He looked down at his plate and hastily changed the subject, what's up with the food here, eh? No ramen. Grover and Naruto started up some random conversation and Percy looked away. Why's he so chummy all of a sudden? Hey, Naruto chirped, this day's been pretty boring. Is this what you guys do all day? The son of Poseidon laughed, do you really wanna know? Naruto cocked his head to one side, you mean this place is actually interesting? They are supposed to protect me, right? Where's this going? To the sword arena, Percy finished with a sly smirk. Tomorrow right after breakfast, agreed. Naruto pushed his plate of brisket away, whatever, just as long as your girlfriend isn't there. Chess not my but Naruto was gone, walking away to the Hermes cabin. When Sakura entered the Athena cabin after dinner, Annabeth was in the corner library ruffling through old scrolls violently, not seeming to have the least interest in them. Malcolm, that immature. She looked up and saw the Kunoichi. Oh, hi. She sat down next to her temporary half-sister and smiled a small smile. Malcolm didn't mean it, you know that, right? Of course I do. She was back at riffling through the scrolls, it's not like I was mad or anything. You weren't. Cold fooled me. XD. Sakura was unconvinced. Okay, what's the problem? Nothing. It's just that all of my siblings, not just Malcolm, are making fun of Percy and me behind our backs and in front of our faces too. It's embarrassing. Sakura nodded in understanding, so you like Percy too? Annabeth's face turned into a steaming tomato. What? You're insane. So you're just going to keep lying to me and yourself? Her hands covered her face as she shook her head dejectedly. I don't know, okay? Surprisingly, Sakura laughed and Annabeth shot her a look of horror. You're laughing. It's just so unnatural, you worry too much. Sakura patted Annabeth on her back and gave her a thumbs up. Don't sweat the small stuff, okay? The rest of the cabin entered and started making way to their bunks, arguing over a few things, but quietly. Annabeth rose and walked out toward the showers. Shush, right, I worry too much, but how can I help it? She sighed irritably when she realized that she was worrying about worrying. 12 o'clock, midnight, Poseidon cabin. Percy's mind was swimming, worries mixing with happiness, sadness and all other kinds of emotions. Resulting in his first Chronos-related nightmare since 1 year ago. It went like this. He was in a stone-cold chamber, or at least it looked like a chamber or a cave. But if it were a cave, why was there a platform with a throne on top of it? A man was kneeling at the platform. He looked like a mortal because his face was creased with worry. For the first time in a long time, Chronos Luke's face was totally concealed in the darkness, but his voice was undeniably Luke's. What do you have to say, lowly mortal? Luke's voice growled out, Chronos' voice slightly audible. It's just to ask you suspected M. Millard, the camp director hired the protectors. Another voice hissed from behind the Titan Lord's throne, the man is unreliable, I can sense it in his voice and smell it in his blood. Luke laughed an icy cold sound. But he was so loyal and still easy to break. With a snap of fingers, a flash of light and a piercing scream, the mortal was gone. Castor. Immediately a young man, who didn't look frightened at all, came and knelt by the throne and said somewhat sourly, yes m'lord. I can depend on my dear half-blood now, can't I? Castor hesitated a split second before answering brokenly, oh of course. Excellent. He snapped his fingers and a Drakena woman slithered up, make sure the boy doesn't expose us. Yes, my lord Cronus. The two left the chamber cave, Castor's hands tied with what looked like rope, glowing with energy. The hissing voice behind the Titan chuckled, even if the mere mortal was unreliable, I saw that he was telling the truth. The centaur hired the ninja. That insolent, roared Chronos, he will surely pay with his life and his precious camp. Gold eyes were now visible through the darkness and they fixed on the demigod. We have a visitor. A pale hand extended and golden energy burst out from his hand. Percy woke in cold sweat. Throwing on some clean clothes, he dashed out of his cabin. It was still dark outside and his mind reeled excitedly and nervously. Castor. As in Mr. D's son who died. Who was that man in the back? He needed to get Annabeth and Grover middle of the night or not. His pace sped up and he saw the Athena cabin up in a distance. Just his luck, because exiting the grey cabin was the girl ninja Sakura wasn't it? He tried to get her attention by calling out, but he realized that his mouth was really sore. She noticed him anyway. Jackson. What are you doing here? I could ask you the same thing, he replied, hands on his knees, breathing heavily. Touché, now really what are you doing? I need to talk with Annabeth. Sakura looked up at the sky. You are aware that it's 4 in the morning, right? Come on. It's an emergency. Before she could laugh and admit him entrance, the person who Percy was looking for spoke from behind. What's up, seaweed brain? She walked toward him and put a hand on his shoulder, for he was still heaving. Looks like you ran 5 miles. What happened? I had a dream. Castor is alive. Kronos kidnapped him. He knows that the ninja are here. What? We need to go to the big house. Chiron needs to hear this. Annabeth nodded in agreement, but before they could take off, Sakura stopped them. Hey, this involves me and Naruto as well. We have to get him too. Go on, Percy said, not really wanting the blonde ninja there. This needs to be reported immediately. So, another voice rang out and Percy clenched his teeth. The ocean boy officially hates me, Dad. Naruto jumped from a tree fully clothed, including his forehead protector. What's all the talk about, Kronos? Percy had a dream about him and his plans, Annabeth answered, ignoring Percy's glare. An. Part of Naruto's famous word, Databeo. Naruto slammed his left fist into his right palm. Then looks like this mission is in full swing. And he jumped off, without waiting for an answer. Sakura shrugged at the 2 demigods. You guys can catch up. I'm sure Naruto Baka doesn't know where the big house is yet. And she too dashed off, leaving a trail of dust behind her. I guess we should start catching up now. Annabeth sighed and started off in a jog. Come on, seaweed brain. Percy nodded, following a few feet behind, just as the sun peeked over Half-Blood Hill. It took about a half hour for the 2 demigods to catch up with the ninja, and Percy took that time to replay the whole dream to Annabeth. And Castor, Mr. D's son, has alive. She sighed. I wonder what. She paused for a brief breath, then finished. Luke is up to. Luke? That is the name of our enemy, isn't it? Percy glanced at Annabeth, looking for any sign of hurt or rejection. Her face was expressionless. Oh yeah, he is. The rest of the walk was filled with an awkward silence until the big house came into view. The ninja and Chiron, who was in his nightcap, stood outside, talking rapidly, and as they approached, the third ninja, Kakashi, exited the house. He seemed to not notice the other people, sitting at the porch table and opening up, make-out tactics. I don't know. I bet you has catching up right now, Sakura was saying. Most likely has taking his time kissing his, but Naruto's retort was interrupted by a fist that slammed in the back of his head. YOWCH. Naruto Baka. Percy, his face red with embarrassment, smirked triumphantly. Shut it, Naruto said. Hey, you didn't hear a peep out of me, Percy replied. Before Naruto could jump up and beat the demigod up, Chiron clopped in between the two. Now you two at 7 in the morning, too early to start any unnecessary squabbles. Yeah, Annabeth added, hands on hips. How immature could you get, seaweed brain? At this, Percy turned red again and Naruto laughed. Yeah, seaweed brain, listen to your girl. Didn't I tell you to shut up? Sakura said. Chiron cleared his throat and Kakashi snapped his book shut. I believe we have business here. Chiron said. Percy, the ninja have informed me that you had a disturbing dream the other night. He nodded, uncertain what to say. Why don't you start from the beginning? Alright, I saw a throne inside a small space, a cave, maybe Kronos or Luke, I wasn't sure. He glanced at the daughter of Athena beside him, but her face showed no sign of sadness. He was talking to mortal man, but then there was another guy, his voice was like a snake. He told Kronos to kill the mortal man. Like a snake, Sakura whispered, her eyes a little wider than usual. Chiron's curiosity spiked. Do you know of a man with a snake's voice? And no, but she shot a look at Naruto and Kakashi, who gave her a quick curt nod. Continue if you please, Chiron said. After the mortal was gone, he called in Castor. I think he was one of the demigods that died during the Battle of the Labyrinth. That's what the other half-bloods called it, Fee. He was Mr. D's son, wasn't he? The gruff voice came from inside the big house. You better bet your best wine it was, Perry Johansson. Mr. D walked through the door in his tiger print Hawaiian shirt and was scratching his big belly. What's all this talk about, my son? We believe Hess being manipulated by the Titan Lord, Chiron supplied. Well, I expected you, Peter Johnson, and you, Annabelle Chase, since you both are mighty heroes and all, to save my son from that monstrosity. He took a seat next to Kakashi, who moved slightly away. Ignoring his comment, Percy continued. He told Castor to come to camp and spy, but I have a gut feeling that that's not what he meant. What else could it be? Annabeth interjected. If Castor is coming here, we'll just snatch him back and let him tell us what's going on. I don't think so, Ms. Chase, Mr. T said gruffly, no one will snatch my son back no matter who it's from. Kakashi took this moment to speak up, if this Castor boy really is coming to spy on the camp, Naruto, Sakura and I have a way to intercept him before he causes any damage. Leonidas' face turned dark purple, do not hurt my son or the next time you wake up you'll be in a bottle of red and very, very confused. With that, he stood and lumbered inside burying his face in a wine magazine. So what's the plan, Kakashi-sama? Chiron asked, looking nervously at the big house's entrance. I'm still trying to work out a few mess points, but it'll be ready by the end of the day, Kakashi replied ignoring the original question. We not have that much time. Percy cried. For all we know Chronos might changed his plans. Why do you think that? He noticed me, Percy said a bit sheepishly. My father won't be that quick in decisions, Percy, Chiron said. We'll be safe for a while, but we'll be sure to increase our security. Without waiting for a reply he looked out in the distance, I believe that it's almost time for breakfast, and as if on cue the conch horn sounded. Do not worry, Chiron said, go on with your daily activities, and he glanced at Naruto and Percy, please cease the unnecessary fighting. Of course Chiron, Sakura and Annabeth answered for the two boys who crossed their arms and looked away from each other. Chiron smiled gratefully, enjoy your day. As the four of them walked back down to the pavilion, the same thought ran through the boys' heads, cease the unnecessary fighting. Yeah, right. They barely made it to the pavilion. Naruto sighed and plopped down on the seat next to Logan, the son of Hermes who beat him up the day before. Where were you, Blondie? Logan snarled. Naruto had asked Grover about the belligerent teen, and the satyr replied, yeah, it was a big shock to everyone that he turned out to be a son of Hermes, we were almost positive he was Ares' spawn. What's it to you? I saw you come strolling in here with that son of Poseidon, thought you hated the dude. Of course I hate him, we were just thrown together in a stupid twist of fate. Logan turned away, looking quite pleased with himself. Athena table, what do you make out of Percy's dream? Sakura was saying to Annabeth, sticking a fork into a sausage. Annabeth shrugged, I'm not sure that Chronos would reveal his plans that easily. Could be a possibility, the pink hair agreed. But, we can't worry about it too much, Chiron told us to lay low a while. At this Sakura raised her eyebrows, you actually think that we're going to lay low about this? Well, you actually think that the boys are going to lay low on this? Annabeth nodded, why? I'm not so sure myself, Naruto doesn't go down that easily. The waffle that was making its way into the daughter of Athena's mouth stopped dead in its tracks, now that I think about it. The two looked at each other, and their eyes widened, Kami dai Imotales, they said in unison. They looked over to the Poseidon table, and sure enough, somehow, Naruto was there whispering to Percy. What do you think they're talking about? Annabeth muttered. Knowing Naruto-kun has probably concocting a plan to get him and Percy killed, Sakura replied with a hint of a smile on her face. The daughter of Athena looked at her in disbelief, and Sakura chuckled, but he doesn't know it. Poseidon table, Naruto left his table and strolled down to the last table on the right side of the pavilion. An. Making this up okay? Percy was sitting there across from Grover, and the two were talking in hushed whispers. You guys planning to break Chiron-sama's request? The satyr looked up and shook his head rapidly, no, it's alright, the ninja sat down next to the two, so what are we going to do? Nothing yet, Percy replied this time, but he didn't make eye contact. We can't do this alone. Ah, Naruto interrupted grinning, you need the help of Konoha's #1 ninja. Percy looked at him, his face wrinkled as if to say, what's the problem with you? No, it's just I'm almost certain that Annabeth would never agree to what we're going to do, so you are our only option. Despite being told off, Naruto's confidence was still 100%. But, you need to learn a few things, Percy continued, his voice filled with annoyance. Do you know how to ride a Pegasus? Thought so, Percy stood. Remember the stables? I guess. Great, Percy turned to the satyr, I'm going to get Blackjack, I think he'll be able to help us too, and without waiting for a response he ran off. Annabeth and Sakura walked up to the two, okay, Sakura said, brow furrowed, what are you idiots going to do? And nothing, Grover stuttered. Yeah, Naruto said, grinning stupidly. We're not gonna do anything stupid. Sure you aren't, Sakura said. Where'd Percy go? Annabeth interrupted. Naruto's grin widened, you're worried about your boyfriend. Seriously, Annabeth said even though her face glowed red. Sorry, Naruto replied, backing off, I'm sworn to secrecy. And he dashed off, the girls and Grover close behind. When they reached the stables, Percy was already there, mounting Blackjack. He saw Naruto and the girls and he frowned, you can't even keep a secret. Not my fault, Naruto countered. They were troublesome enough to follow. Spill, Percy, Annabeth challenged, shoving Naruto out of her way. The poor ninja then crashed into Sakura, who socked him in the face. You can't expect me to let this go unnoticed, Percy replied, jumping off the black Pegasus. Chronos might be on the move this minute. We all know that, Annabeth said, but like Chiron said, we have to lay low. You don't know that for sure, Annabeth, nobody knows but for all we know, if we lay low we all might be killed, the son of Poseidon snapped. Annabeth recoiled like she'd just been slapped. Percy? Wait, Percy stuttered trying to fix his retort, Annabeth. Bang. The place shook and Naruto and Sakura were fully alert. We're under attack. Percy yelled. No crap Sherlock. Naruto yelled back drawing a kunai knife. Ignoring the crack Percy swung himself on Blackjack, you guys can follow, he said to the ninja, and soon they knew what he meant. The black Pegasus kicked off the ground, but before he was fully in the air, Percy reached a hand down and yanked Annabeth up onto his horse. Hey, she yelped. He grinned sheepishly, I'm sorry, he whispered sincerely, but I can't go into battle without you. Another blast sounded out this time followed by some panicked combat orders from Claris. Oh. Sakura yelled, well catch up. As Blackjack soared upward, Annabeth screamed, wrapped her arms around Percy's waist, and buried her face into his shoulder. Afraid of heights. Percy snickered. Annabeth kept her eyes closed as she threatened, Perseus Jackson don't you dare make this horse go. Don't go any higher. Percy said as they neared Half-Blood Hill, okay then. He pulled on Blackjack's mane, and they started to plummet toward the ground. Oh gods, Annabeth thought as the wind whistled by. We're getting closer. Percy called over his shoulder, take care of Blackjack for me okay? The daughter of Athena's eyes snapped open, what? But Percy was gone, he jumped off Blackjack and was sailing down, like a skydiver, to the top of Half-Blood Hill. Annabeth reached forward and grabbed Blackjack's mane, gripping it until her knuckles turned white. Lower me down, she told him. As Percy free fell he drew out a golden pen, he took off the cap and it lengthened into a 3-foot bronze sword. He looked down and gawked at what he saw. A monster was down there, one that he didn't think he would see in a long time, the Hydra. More panicked cries came from below and the Hydra screeched horridly. Percy touched down and smoothly rolled to the aid of the other campers. Percy, Travis Stoll called from to his left, about time you got here, the monster started talking about how he was going to smash you. Talk. Percy thought. The last time I fought the Hydra it didn't say a thing. But everything fell into place. Naruto and Sakura jogged up to Half-Blood Hill, and something shimmered on the monster's back. Logan was sitting there, leaned back, looking smug, then Logan disappeared and was replaced by Luke. About 100 feet in the sky, Annabeth looked down at Half-Blood Hill and gasped. Luke. No, what's he doing here? Without a second thought, the daughter of Athena drew her bronze knife and hurled it toward the earth. Blackjack. She said. Down. Luke was smirking. His loose red t-shirt billowed in the sudden breeze. His tattered jeans were muddy and his gold hair was streaked with gray. I miss this place, he said. Well we sure don't miss you, Connor called from below. At this, the Hydra screeched as if to say, don't patronize Master Luke. The traitor's smirk melted into a scowl. He disappeared for a split second and then appeared again on the top of the Hydra's many heads. Miss me brother? You're not my brother, Connor growled. Luke shed and reached into his pocket. Connor and the rest of the campers held up their swords, ready to fight. But to their surprise, Luke brought out a piece of wheat and held it in his mouth. XD, you know, like the farmers. Pity, he crowed out loud enough for everyone to hear, you were one of my favorites. The camp stiffened at the word, were. Luke sucked in a huge breath and spit out the wheat piece. It soared downward like a golden bullet headed straight for Connor's head. In a flash of black and orange Connor was out of the way and the wheat bullet embedded itself into the ground and pebbles and earth flew out in different directions. Naruto stood over Connor and snapped his head back in Luke's direction. Who are you? Luke asked venomously. Naruto smirked and pointed to himself proudly, I'm your worst nightmare. Luke chortled, you? My, he formed air quotes, worst nightmare. One of his hands formed a handgun. This time Naruto laughed. What are you planning to do to me with that thing? Play cops and robbers. Luke's evil smirk returned. He pointed his gun to the ninja, bang. After that single word, all Hades broke loose. Red lightning shot out from Luke's finger gun and Naruto stood there, dumbfounded. Percy sprinted toward his newfound rival, but he knew it was too late to help. At the last possible minute, Annabeth's knife sailed down and impaled itself in Luke's wrist. Erg. Luke clutched at his wrist, which was bleeding gold. The daughter of Athena landed on her back a few feet from the Hydra. She jumped up just as Luke recovered. You, he hissed. And an edge came to his voice that hadn't been there before. The icy snarl of the Titan Lord, Kronos. Luke, Annabeth said, sounding 10 times braver than she felt, you're not going to get away with this. And the superhero wannabes keep appearing, he growled. Kronos flexed his injured arm. He pulled the knife out, resulting in a burst of golden blood. No, please, Luke, don't hurt yourself. Kronos laughed icily, foolish child, you still believe that your beloved Luke still exists. He spread his arms wide, Luke is dead. He gave up his body to me, he served me faithfully for 5 years, and this the Titan Lord gestured to Luke's body, is the best show of his loyalty. You're wrong. Kronos raised an eyebrow, really? Well, would Luke do this? His hand formed the finger gun again. Die Athenian and he shot. Naruto was getting ready for another heroic save, but this time Percy got there first. The son of Poseidon put the blade of Riptide up and the lightning reflected off, but the sheer force of the lightning threw Percy and Annabeth on the ground. Are you okay? Percy asked. I think so, Annabeth replied. The icy voice rang out again, ah, Perseus. Have you finally come to your senses to join me? Percy hoisted himself up, yeah, maybe when pigs fly. He pointed his bronze sword at the Titan Lord's face. Before I slice you up like an apple, Percy said, answer me this, how'd you get into the camp? Chronos smiled, a little friend I like to call Orochimaru. Orochimaru? Naruto called out shocked, how'd that snake get in contact with you? Now that is confidential information, Chronos replied. Naruto started to run toward him, tell me. The ninja jumped as high as the Hydra to the rest of the campers' amazement. He swung his foot at Chronos, but he disappeared and reappeared on another of the Hydra's heads. TSK, impatient now are we? Naruto stood on the Hydra's head, in a fighting stance. Sasuke, Hess involved in this, isn't he? Sasuke. Chronos put on a face of mock surprise, why, whatever gave you that idea? Where is he? Chronos yawned, Hess a very talented young man, Sasuke, he mentioned you Naruto is it not? Yes, he said that Hess itching for a fight. Red started to bleed into Naruto's eyes, where? Is? Sasuke. And why would I tell you? Naruto held out his palm, and all the chakra around him started to mold into his Rasengan. I'll ask you one more time, where is Sasuke? His eyes were red now and his hair was messy. From below Sakura gasped. She remembered this just like with Orochimaru. The Kyuubi. Naruto-kun. You idiot. Percy chimed in, Hess too strong for you. Shut up. Naruto screamed, I will save Sasuke. The Rasengan was complete and it was whirring, ready to attack. Die. Naruto sprinted to Chronos, his speed twice as fast. Rasengan. To his utter amazement, the Titan Lord caught the swirling ball of energy and crushed it. Still holding the ninja's arm, Chronos slammed his fist up Naruto's gut. He flew off of the monster and smashed into the ground. Turning toward them Chronos laughed manically, behold the power of the Titan Lord. Then, something unexpected happened. Chronos' eyes shot wide and he clutched at his head, AAHH. He stumbled. I thought it would last longer. And before anyone could register anything, the Hydra exploded. Percy threw himself over Annabeth as rocks rained down on Half-Blood Hill. Once the explosion was over, Percy looked up to see Chiron bending over the scene of the crime. Chiron, Percy said. Did you? No child, the centaur replied, I got here too late. But what happened to him? Annabeth asked shakily to no one in particular. She gently pushed Percy off her and asked again, what happened? Naruto-kun. The two demigods looked over and saw Sakura leaning over Naruto. Odds, they ran over to the pink hair and saw the damage. Naruto had a nasty gash on his head and his orange-black jacket was slowly turning darker. We have to take him to the big house, Percy said urgently. He really didn't like the ninja, but he didn't deserve this. No, Sakura replied. I can cure him here. Sakura, the three looked up to see Kakashi in a tree, take him to the big house you can cure him there. But sensei, it's too dangerous, the elite ninja interrupted. Let's get moving, his conditions are getting worse. Nodding Sakura picked up her comrade and ran down the hill toward the big house. Come on, Percy said, let's go too. When they reached the big house they wasted no time to put Naruto in one of their many sickbeds. We can't give him any nectar or ambrosia, Annabeth said in a panicked voice. Hess not a demigod. He doesn't need any, Sakura said calmly kneeling by his bedside. She held a palm over Naruto's bleeding body. She took a deep breath and closed her eyes. The Kunoichi's hand turned green and she moved it up and down her comrade's wounds. The demigods watched in awe as Naruto's clothing, which was dark with blood, start to fade back to its usual color. How Annabeth started. Kakashi stood from a chair from which he was sitting. Sakura here was trained as a medical ninja under the teachings of our village leader. In a few more minutes, Sakura's hand regained its natural color and she slumped back, exhausted. I think that's it, and then she turned on her sensei, Kakashi sensei, where were you? The elite ninja's eyes darkened, Luke kept us busy back here. Annabeth shook her head, that wasn't Luke. He would never. Percy looked down, he wanted to assure her that everything would be alright, but his voice wasn't working. The awkwardness was broken when Naruto groaned in pain. All eyes looked to the bed as the ninja regained consciousness. Sakura-chan, Kakashi-sensei. Kakashi seemed to crack a tiny smile under his mask as Sakura was instantly by his bedside. Naruto-kun. I just love using the Japanese suffixes okay? What happened? His blue eyes were a bit glassy. I remember Chronos talking about Orochimaru and then blank. What do you mean? Percy interrupted. You attacked the Titan Lord when he mentioned some Sasuke guy. At the mention of his old comrade, the genin shot up from the bed, Sasuke. Almost immediately, Naruto clutched his side in pain. Naruto, Sakura scolded as he slumped in his bed again, don't strain yourself, my medic jutsu hasn't started its effect yet. But, Hess still out there, Naruto protested, but he closed his eyes gratefully. At this point, Chiron clopped into the room, his face ashen. I spoke with the gods, he said. Lord Zeus is starting to think that this ninja business is getting out of hand. He thinks that this is your entire he gestured to the ninja's fault. What? Percy and Annabeth exclaimed at the same time. They didn't do anything, Annabeth continued. Without them the whole camp cold been in flames. They can help us, Percy agreed. Chiron looked troubled as he started to pace the floor uncomfortably. It would really upset the Lord of the Gods, but I see a point in your argument. Percy grinned at Annabeth in victory, but Chiron said, but I'm afraid I can't do a thing about it, the ninja will have to leave. The room acquired a sudden cold aura, leave. Sakura said quietly. Naruto was wide awake once again, we can't leave, he objected loudly. Orochimaru is here. Sasuke is here. Sakura and I both made a vow. We'll never leave Sasuke. Kakashi made a movement to calm him down until Percy interjected, Chiron, uncle said that they have to leave camp, right? And the old centaur nodded. Well then, how about we all leave camp? His suggestion was met by blank stares. What are you blabbing about, ocean spawn? Naruto scoffed. Yeah, Percy, Annabeth said, but then she got a light of understanding in her eyes. Seaweed brain, she said at last, it never thought this day would come, but that's genius. He gave her a goofy grin, isn't it? Sakura glared, what are you two? Chiron. Percy interrupted. We want a quest. Naruto cracked a tiny smile, ha. Looks like you've gotten some brains from your girlfriend. Percy just smiled back, proud of his plan. Well, Chiron said, grinning at the son of Poseidon, there was no rule against that. He looked back and forth between the two demigods and the three ninja. Percy, he said, I think it is time for you to consult the oracle. A few minutes later Percy was standing in the attic, facing the mummified body of the oracle. He took a deep breath, had done this before his first quest. As if on cue, the oracle opened her eyes and spoke in her mystifying voice in his mind. I am the speaker of Delphi, speaker of the prophecies of Phobos, Apollo, slayer of the mighty Python. Approach Seeker and ask. Gathering up his courage like he did so many years before, he asked, how can we defeat the Titan Lord? Instead of speaking through illusions, illusions, like Smelly Gabe and his buddies in Lightning Thief. Like she always does, the oracle spoke for herself. At the dawn of the last day, you and your friend shall make your way up the mountain monster infested, the mountain in which you never rested. The lonely and rejected one will see that the deed is done, the deed that the hissing one left. A comrade of a comrade, the trap is set. Watch the sky above and be careful with your love. The oracle's voice echoed the word love as the attic grew silent again. Percy let out a sigh of relief, but his mind was still reeling with the words the oracle spoke. He walked down the stairs back to Naruto's sick room. All of them were waiting, the tension in the air was so huge that it felt like that the room was holding its breath. Well? Chiron asked, more curious than usual. I saw the oracle, Percy said. Annabeth rolled her eyes, we get that part, seaweed brain. What did she say? The son of Poseidon closed his eyes as he repeated the oracle's words. The room was quiet again once he finished. What do you guys think? Percy asked almost reluctantly. I think my brain just took a vacation, Naruto whined. How can you people ever figure that out? But Annabeth was already deciphering the poem. At the dawn of the last day, that could mean anything, last day of the week, the month before anyone else could do some hardcore thinking. The daughter of Athena snapped her fingers. Oh. I bet it's referring to the last day that the ninja could stay. That makes a lot of sense since the last day of the week is 5 days away and the last day of the month is about 2 weeks away. The second line is simple enough, Sakura mumbled, now the third. Percy and Annabeth looked at each other and said in unison, Mount Tam. Mount Ha. Naruto mumbled from the bed. Mount Tam is where we fought Luke and where I got this. Percy ran a hand through a small gray streak in his hair. You got old. Naruto joked. No, Percy snapped. It was from holding up the sky at this, Naruto chortled. That's not kidding, Annabeth said, I have one too, and she let her hair down from its ponytail, and standing out from her blonde curls was the exact same gray streak. Naruto bit his tongue. Mount Tam is definitely the mountain in which we never rested, so that removes the fourth stanza, Percy continued as Annabeth was retying her ponytail. But the rest could be anything. Annabeth nodded, no ideas here either. I got it, Sakura said. The hissing one has to be Orochimaru. He acts so much like a snake that it's unreal. But woe's the lonely and rejected one? Naruto asked. That's what we need to find out, Percy answered. Chiron and Kakashi, who were standing, patiently spoke up. Now that is settled, Chiron called, pack up. Looks like there will be a long journey ahead of you. The demigods wished the ninja well and left. Once they were gone, Naruto said, Sakura, I think I figured out one of the lines. Really? Sakura asked, surprised. And what would that be? And be careful with your love, he smirked, it doesn't get simpler than that. Percy and Annabeth, Sakura laughed lightly. I'll go steal your bag from the Hermes cabin, and from there who knows what'll happen. At the dawn of the last day, Percy, Annabeth, Naruto, Sakura and Kakashi were standing at the top of Half-Blood Hill. The remnants of the Hydra's explosion were still there, scorched grass and half-dead trees. But Thalia's tree stood glistening, the golden fleece hanging from its lower branch. Grover trotted up, he was going to stay at camp and monitor the other satyrs and the protection of the last wildlife places in the world. "Good luck you guys," he said. "This looks like one heck of a mission." He shook hands with the ninja and gave his two best friends a hug. "Thanks G-Man," Percy grinned. "Yeah, see you soon Grover," Annabeth added, waving. He left just as the sun rose. "Looks like it's time to go," Naruto mumbled. And thunder rumbled in a distance. Sakura's nose wrinkled, "What's up with the thunder? I see no clouds." Percy and Annabeth laughed. "What?" Sakura demanded. But instead of answering Percy called up, "Alright uncle, we're going." Uncle Sakura started then grinned, "Uncle Zeus, god of lightning." The six of them piled in the camp van. "Before we set out," Percy said, "I want to go see my mom, I think I forgot something at home." The ride into town was grueling, and all the way Naruto was muttering, "Too many buildings, what a waste of space." "You mean you have none of this in Konoha?" Annabeth asked. "What is the architecture like there?" Naruto began scratching his chin. "Basic houses I guess, I live in an apartment building, the stores are kind of like booths," and he stopped when the daughter of Athena made a face. "What?" She laughed a little, "Sorry, but there are so many things you could improve." "Improve?" "You see," Percy explained, "Annabeth wants to be an architect when she grows up, so she's been obsessing over monuments lately." "I'm not obsessing," Annabeth protested, "I just research and wonder, and..." "See, obsessing." And that earned Percy a smack on the head. In 20 minutes the camp van screeched to a halt outside Percy's apartment building. "What a drawn-up place," Naruto scoffed. "It's called home," the son of Poseidon snapped. "It's called a dump. You wanna fight, Fox?" The genin drew up a sleeve, "If you can handle it Ocean Spawn." The other four tried to break it up before it got out of hand until Percy heard the familiar voice. "Percy? Percy, is that you?" "Oh, Percy. Mom." He was attacked with a vicious hug by Sally Jackson. "Percy, Percy, Percy. Oh, I missed you so much." The woman squeezed her son with so much force that the son of Poseidon felt his eyes bulging. "I missed you too," he groaned. "Hey, can you ease up a little?" "Oh." She let her grip slacken and Percy took in a sharp breath. Watching the happy reunion, Annabeth laughed. Sally turned to her. "Annabeth." She extended a hand, "It's so nice seeing you again, have you been keeping Percy safe?" Annabeth shook Ms. Jackson's hand and her face turned red, and Percy laughed, "Of course," he chortled, "without her, it'd probably rotting in Tartarus right now." "Nice to see you too Ms. Jackson," the daughter of Athena added quietly. Did I miss something?" Naruto piped up, "Woes the lady." Sally turned to the ninja. "Oh," she said not seeming to mind the question, "are you more of Percy's friends?" Naruto and Percy glowered at each other. "Hess not my friend." The two both claimed in unison. Kakashi stepped up, "I apologize mom for my student's behavior toward your son." He bowed slightly. "I am Kakashi Haddock, elite jounin from the village hidden within the leaves." One of the ninja, Sally nodded, "Thank you so much for protecting the camp." "You knew about it?" Percy asked. "Of course," Sally answered, "that's why I didn't go after you just as soon as you left." She fished in one of her pockets and pulled out a crumpled up note with Percy's scrawled handwriting on it. "Now what in the name of you father are you doing here?" "I forgot something at home," Percy explained, "and I think that it can help us with our quest." Sally's lips were pressed into a hard line. "Quest," she murmured. But Percy already disappeared into the complex. She turned to Annabeth, "It's dangerous isn't it?" She nodded solemnly, "But don't worry Ms. Jackson," she assured her, "I promise Percy will come back to you in one piece." Sally's hard expression relaxed. "I don't know why Annabeth," she began, "but I know that I can count on you, even in the direst situations." Before she could say anything else, Percy burst out of the complex, a satisfied look on his face. "Got it." He cried. "What Ocean Spawn," Naruto said. "Yeah, you haven't told us what you were getting in the first place, seaweed brain," Annabeth added. "Oh yeah." Percy dug into the pockets of his jeans and pulled out a sand dollar. "My dad gave this to me for my 15th birthday," he said. "I have a feeling I'll need it." "Barak," Naruto yelled out. "What are you going to do with it Ocean Spawn? Throw it at the Titan Lord?" Percy just scowled at him and pocketed the sand dollar. Just as he did this, a hissing noise came from one of the alleyways Percy's apartment building was nestled in. HSSS. The seven of them looked around nervously and a Drakena slithered out, wielding a steel sword. "Give me the sand dollar Persis," and it slithered, so quick that the others only saw a green blur, and the next thing they knew, it held the sword tipped to Annabeth's neck. "I might spare your beloved." "Don't do it," Annabeth whispered. She was pulled from the group so that no one was standing behind the snake woman. The Drakena smirked, "Surrender the present, son of the sea god, and the girl will be spared." Thinking quick, Annabeth grabbed her bronze knife in her pocket and held it quietly. "Give me the axe." The daughter of Athena jabbed the snake woman with her elbow, then spun around and shoved her knife into its chest. The monster screamed and disintegrated. "These attacks are just getting more and more random," Annabeth grumbled. Then her knees buckled, but Percy caught her before she fell. XD. Corniness. "We have to get going," he said to no one in particular, "it's not safe here, especially with all the pedestrians." He picked up Annabeth who had passed out and turned to his mother, "Wish us luck, Mom. Apparently some of Chrono's monsters are stalking us," Sakura observed darkly as the camp van drove off. The atmosphere was very tense and was only broken by Annabeth's even breathing as she slept on Percy's shoulder. More corniness. "I think we need to get off your Argus-aunt," Kakashi said politely. They stopped by one of the few forests in New York. "It isn't safe just driving around, we need to proceed to Mount Tam by foot." Argus just gave a curt nod and he unlocked the van. The six of them exited, Annabeth still in Percy's arms. "Wake her," Naruto said flatly, not looking at Percy. He shook his head, "She needs her rest, it'd be better if she was at full attention if we run into a fight again." The ninja just fed and stalked off. Kakashi sighed, "Time to go." The group walked for the rest of the day without being attacked and without Annabeth waking up. They decided to camp out in a forest near the highway where people are less likely to stop, as Kakashi had said. Percy had a strange sense of deja vu. "I've been here before," he mumbled as Naruto tended the fire. The other two ninja held hot dogs over the lightly crackling flames. "Why don't you check it out then?" Naruto grumbled moodily. He chomped on his own hot dog that he burnt a few minutes ago. "Damn it." He threw the piece of meat on the ground. "This sucks, we're going across the freaking country just to teach that damned snake a lesson." "Don't you want to save Sasuke?" Sakura asked through a yawn. "Of course, but now we have to deal with this Luke guy and the Time Lord. Can't Orochimaru do something evil without any stupid accomplices?" Percy wrapped a blanket around him, the weather was getting colder and it was due to snow in a few days, remember, he reminded the spiky hair, "This thing didn't start out like this, you thought that this was a little vacation." The son of Poseidon licked his lips, "You cold just left. But now Sasuke's involved, I can't just leave him." Naruto held his hands over the fire and exhaled a puff of smoke. "What's up with this Sasuke anyway?" Percy asked. Naruto scowled, "None of your business, ocean spawn." Sakura looked at him threateningly, "He has a right to know, Naruto-kun, and Hess offering to help us." "I'm not offering anything," Percy objected sourly, "the only reason I'm with you guys is because of the Titan Lord." Sakura smiled inwardly, "But remember, you were the one who suggested the quest, so we won't leave." "I'm still not saying," Naruto declared stubbornly. Sakura rolled her eyes and said, "Sasuke was our comrade, but he betrayed us, to put it simply." She pursed her lips, "Sasuke's brother killed his family, but for some reason he spared Sasuke, and Sasuke got power hungry." She swiped a hand in front of her eyes, she was crying. "Don't beat yourself up, Sakura," Kakashi said. He was leaning against a tree, his right eye closed. "Sasuke's coming back." No one said anything else. Percy took out his bedroll and spread it next to the fire. Naruto was following his master's example and was snoring with his back on a nearby tree. Sakura was curled up on her own sleeping bag, her expression blank, though he thought he saw a single tear glistening. He closed his eyes. Percy woke to the sound of a rustling bedroll. His drowsy eyes drooped open and he saw Annabeth sitting up, retying her ponytail. "Leave it down," he suddenly said. The daughter of Athena whirled around startled. "Oh, Percy," she said relieved. "Leave it down," Percy repeated. He stretched and pulled his sleeping bag closer to hers. "What? Leave your hair down," he said simply, "looks better that way." "Oh." She fiddled with the hair tie for a moment, then pocketed it. "Sorry, about the fainting thing," she blurted out, blundering for words. It's just that the Drakena." Percy smiled, "It's okay, but you still need more rest." "I am fine now, really, I just wanted to think." "About what?" A few moments passed. "Things," she said, evading the question. Percy smiled, "You know you can tell me anything, right, wise girl?" Yeah, her voice sounded far off, like she was dreaming. "The stars," she whispered. He looked up. The black sky was painted with milky stars all winking at them. "They're beautiful," he agreed. Annabeth leaned casually on his shoulder and closed her eyes. "We've been through so much together," she said, her head on his shoulder. Oh. Percy's face was beet red and Annabeth took this the wrong way. "Oh. Sorry, Percy." She hastily got up and moved away, cheeks tinted pink. Percy blurted out, "Hey, it's not like that." He felt a sharp twinge in the back of his neck. He looked back and saw Naruto a few rocks in his palm and one cerulean eye open, gesturing encouragingly to Annabeth, who was sitting a far distance from both of them, her head down. "Do something," he hissed at the demigod, "the prophecy." Percy looked confused, "What does this have to do with the prophecy?" Naruto smacked his forehead, wide awake now, be careful with your love, he repeated the final line of the oracle's prophecy. If you don't be careful your love might slip away. Chess not my love, Percy whispered back, we're just best friends. You're not fooling anyone. Naruto's retort was a bit too loud and Annabeth turned to see what the commotion was about. The ninja quickly shut his eyes and pretended to snore. Did you say something, Percy? She asked. And no, they sat for a few awkward moments in the sound-filled silence, cricket singing and the rustle of leaves further down the wood. Percy stood up and moved further away from the warmth of the fire, where Annabeth sat. You know I didn't mean it that way. What do you mean? Annabeth didn't meet his eyes, a light breeze started ruffling her blonde hair. The fire crackled in the background and the whole forest seemed to have a calmer feel to it. Percy started struggling for words, I mean when you leaned, I didn't mean, and I actually oh gods. He put his face in his hands, murmuring about how stupid he is. The daughter of Athena giggled quietly and scooted next to him. The wind picked up and the leaves whistled happily as she leaned on his shoulder once more. Is it just me, or are the trees laughing? As if the wood took the comment seriously, the wind subsided. Creepy, Percy chuckled. Percy, do you think that we'll ever save Luke? The question was so sudden that the son of Poseidon was taken aback. Of course, he said after a few seconds. You know, if he is still the good guy. He stopped, realizing what he just said. Not again. Annabeth was up again, scrutinizing him. What do you mean if he's still a good guy? The temperature seemed to drop drastically when Percy met her icy glare. He gathered his wits and defended himself, he sacrificed himself to Kronos. You saw him on Half-Blood Hill. She shook her head frantically, that was not Luke, somehow Kronos took over his body. Why do you always defend him? Percy's voice was low, dangerous, and maybe even a little rejected. I don't have to answer your question, seaweed brain. Percy was on his feet and he realized with a start that he was a few inches taller than Annabeth. I bet you still love him, he spat the words at her. And what if I still do? The words shot through Percy like a bullet. If you love him so much, then why don't you join him? His voice shook in sadness and anger. How could you love him? I thought. Would it make you happy if I did? She sounded equally hurt, but more anger seeped through. I wouldn't care. Annabeth pursed her lips and stalked off. Fine, Percy, she whispered. She took her bedroll, stuffed it in her bag and slung the bag over her shoulder. Fine. The son of Poseidon just crossed his arms, mouth pressed into a hard line. She won't. She turned around and looked at him, tears threatening to fall. Then without a word, she stalked off into the wood. The leaves crunched beneath her feet as she angrily marched through the pitch-black forest. If he doesn't need me I can take care of myself fine. But she wasn't sure. Dropping her bag with a thump, Annabeth sank down beside a birch tree and cried herself to sleep as the trees whispered the words, be careful with your love. He thought it was a dream, he hoped it was a dream, but when Percy awoke the next morning his fears were confirmed. Annabeth wasn't there. It was dawn, little beams of sunlight seeped through the thick canopy of leaves overhead. He threw off his blanket and surveyed the area around him. No, she really wasn't there. We're searching the area. Percy whipped around and faced Kakashi. He held his book open in one hand, but he wasn't reading it. The elite ninja looked at Percy intently and sighed. Naruto and Sakura are scouring the forest. Percy immediately jumped up, leaves crunching under his feet, then let's go. I want to help find her. Kakashi looked uncomfortable as he answered, both of them came back twice with reports while you were sleeping they found no sign of her. As if on cue, Naruto jumped from a pine and landed neatly on his feet. He didn't even cast a sideways glance of Percy. Nothing, he reported sadly. Percy's heart clenched. No. This can't be happening. No. A few seconds passed and Sakura joined the solemn party with just a shake of her head. She looked at Percy. I'm sorry Percy-kun, I wish we could do more. Well, Kakashi picked up a bag that has been packed before Percy woke. Looks like we'll have to make do without her. Percy wanted to protest, but his throat constricted. He just nodded, his heart slowly breaking. I didn't mean it, I never wanted her to leave. The air grew thick with tension and it followed them as they leave their camping site. Do you know of a faster way to this Mount Tam of yours besides walking? Naruto got his sour mood back, but his heart wasn't in it. He would never admit it in a million years, in 1,000,001 years, but he kind of felt sorry for Percy. The quartet walked the length of the forest staying close, but not too close, to the highway. The surrounding area grew eerily familiar to Percy as they advanced. Sinister branches reaching out as if to grab him, the sun seemed to lose its heat, it felt as if all of the happiness in the world was being sucked right up. But then it happened. The cold air suddenly grew warm and welcoming, beautiful smells wafted their way. And on the look on Naruto's face, they were all on cloud nine. Percy's senses refused to give in to the wonderful smells and feelings. His senses refused to, for they have experienced something like this before. About 3 years before. The son of Poseidon narrowed his eyes. You guys, he started slowly. What is it? Naruto asked. His cheeks looked pink and his eyes were half-lidded, drool seeping out from the corner of his mouth. Is anything wrong? Sakura's eyes were closed and she looked like she was experiencing pure bliss. Percy looked around frantically, he knew this place he just cold to remember yet. Reluctantly he glanced at Kakashi, hoping that whatever was entrancing Naruto and Sakura wasn't affecting the elite ninja. He regretted it. Kakashi had a dreamy look on his face and he was chuckling like a drunk. What the heck is going on? For safety, Percy clutched a Treptide in his pocket, ready to uncap it at any sign of danger. Son of Poseidon, how I've missed you. Percy winced, he knew that voice. I thought I got rid of you, he said trying to sound brave. The voice, which was rich and warm, giggled, my how you've grown. Just as handsome as your father. Look, I'm not in a good mood today, so don't waste my time. The ninja were staggering and slamming into each other, laughing stupidly. Snap out of it. Percy turned to them and started shaking their shoulders. Don't fall for it. Shush, really, before she could finish, leaves swirled around him, trying to make an illusion. Percy uncapped Treptide. Hey, he said, getting into a fighting stance. I thought your demonic magic only worked on males. The voice giggled and answered, they do. Percy slashed at the leaves, but to no avail. Then how come Sakura is? Oh, that. The voice came out in fragments and merged to form the sentence. The leaves whooshed more violently around and Percy's slashing and jabbing were getting him nowhere. I've brought a little friend with me. Cut it out. Percy screamed. The voice laughed again. Aw, are you still saddened about your little squabble with the daughter of Athena last night? He stopped for a moment. How do you know about that? I know nothing of it, the Titan Lord knows a bunch though, and has come to fetch your little Aniabeth right now. Percy's eyes got a menacing look to them. Don't you dare hurt her, or I swear to the gods. The voice just giggled. My work here is done, she said gleefully. I'll see you later, Percy. The leaves abruptly stopped whirling and cascaded down, some fluttering in Percy's black mop of hair. He scanned the surrounding trees and looked down to where the ninja lay, unconscious. His eyes shot wide. I brought a friend, Kelly had said. An. Yes, demise from Kelly the Impausa. Sakura was entranced. That could only mean there was a male Impausa with Kelly. Well, he must have entranced her good because she was gone. Off into the woods. Annabeth was just rising from her long, dreamless sleep. Birds twittered off in a distance, and she sighed. I can't believe I was stupid enough to do that, she mumbled to herself. Her mother would be furious with her daughter's hasty and unwise actions. But in this situation, Annabeth was sure that her mom was well pleased. Athena never took a liking to Percy or Poseidon. She despised Poseidon for bringing that vile creature, Medusa, to her temple. And in turn, hated every single one of his offspring. In a few minutes, Annabeth was refreshed and ready for the trek back to Camp Half-Blood. Where else could she go? But before she took a step, the wind picked up violently, knocking her forward. Woes there? She demanded, jumping to her feet. She drew her bronze knife and looked around. The winds kept up their high speeds, and the trees moaned. Ruin, ruin, they whispered. But before she could do just that, a light flashed for a fraction of a second, and in front of her stood a boy, barely her age, with black gelled hair and red beautiful eyes. He wore a tuxedo with a small red bow tie. Hello, Annabeth, he said in barely a whisper. Annabeth pointed her bronze knife at him. Who are you? She asked. My apologies, the boy bowed low. My name is Doman Hunter, I am the newest addition to Luke's army. Then I don't want to see you here, she said angrily. Doman bowed again, but what kind of gentleman would I be to not obey orders? His eyes glowed devilishly, and with amazing speed and dexterity, Annabeth soon found her hands behind her back and Doman securing them with a rope. Let me go, you monster. Annabeth yelled. Doman hissed, I am not a monster, miss, I am a gentleman. His slow, even voice sent shivers up Annabeth's spine. What does Luke want with me? She asked softly. Master Luke seems to have a great interest in you, miss, Doman replied. He took a whiff of the girl's neck and sighed. Now I think I know why. Annabeth turned red and scowled. Some kind of gentleman you are, she retorted. Doman laughed lowly and pushed her ahead of him, through the trees, and out to a clearing. In the meadow, which was scarily close resemblance to Half-Blood Hill, was a helicopter. It was the same helicopter that housed Dr. Thorne winters ago. I have the girl, Doman murmured as he pushed Annabeth to the sleek black vehicle. Good job, Doman. Kelly stepped out from behind the copter's tail and leaned on the metal. Not bad for a first-timer. Doman gave her a half smile. This one was easier than the pink hair, he purred. Still, Kelly said, really lucky that Luke found one of the last male Impausi. Male Impausa? Annabeth thought frantically. Pink hair. Oh no. So that means Doman pushed her forward. Head in the copter, miss, he whispered. Knowing that she had no choice, the daughter of Athena obediently stepped in. Kelly giggled, ooh, nice trick, looks like she already obeys you. After Annabeth settled in the seat, she shot a menacing look the Impausa's way. For the record, I'm not obeying him. I entered on my own accord. Ellie smirked and slammed the copter's door. Annabeth knew she had only little time left. She searched with her bound hands for her knife which she hid in her back pocket, but it was empty. Looking for this. Doman stood on the opposite side of the copter, with the other door open. He twirled the bronze knife around his fingers. What kind of gentleman would I be if I turned up at headquarters with a torn-up helicopter? But Annabeth wasn't looking at him, she was looking at what he held under the other arm. Cotton candy hair dangling, forehead protector splattered in mud. Sakura. Doman smiled, and his red eyes twinkled. So you do know her well then. He threw Sakura into the copter next to Annabeth. Well, take off shortly. He winked at her and slammed that door shut as well. Please Percy, please save me. Percy ripped through the forest. Annabeth, please be okay. He weaved through the tall trees and zipped through the rough bushes. How could he be so stupid? It was his fault after all. He defied the oracle's prophecy. He didn't be careful with his love. Before he ran off he was careful to prop up the ninja. But he didn't think about how infuriated they would be when they found out that he set off in search of Annabeth and Sakura without them. Ocean spawn. Naruto leaped out of a looming tree and tackled Percy down. Let me go, Fox. Percy kicked at him, but the ninja held him fast. I need to save her. Naruto sneered, how about Sakura? Of course, Percy struggled again to get free. They're in trouble, and you're holding me back from possibly finding them. You can't find them alone, Naruto barked. Then he took a deep breath. Look, Ocean SPA Percy, I hate you just as much as you hate me, but we need to pull together, for the girls. Percy just scowled, where's Master Kakashi? Still out cold, but he'll be able to find us. Naruto looked dead serious. Look, do you want to save your girlfriend or what? Of course I do. Percy exclaimed, not really minding the girlfriend part. Naruto got off the demigod and helped him up, then we need to work together. Percy scowled and shrugged Naruto's hand off his shoulder. I bet I can manage by myself. A lot of good it's done you, huh? Percy flinched, knowing he was right. And what do you suggest, Fox? He said sourly. We work together. Naruto gave a frustrated sigh and started to pace the forest floor. Listen, we're wasting our time here. You tackled me. Percy protested. The little red bled into Naruto's eyes, but he shook it off before Percy could notice. Can we please work this out? So you're the peacemaker now? Percy said with mock politeness. It'd be with Annabeth right now, if it wasn't for you. Yeah. With her in a cage. Thunder rumbled, and leaves were picked up by the wind, giving the two a menacing atmosphere. An. Think of the end of the second Naruto Shippuden opening. Naruto, someone called out. The two whipped their heads back, and the atmosphere grew tenser. A brown pug dog leaped from the bushes and landed on Naruto's face. Ack. The ninja fell back and started twitching. The pug dog looked up in Percy's surprised green eyes. Have you seen Naruto? It asked. The dog cocked its miniature head to one side. Have you seen him, kid, or are you just gonna gawk at me all day? Percy recoiled, officially freaked out. Who are you? Me? The dog gave a chuckle and jumped off of Naruto, still having no idea he was there. The name's Pakken, and who are you? Percy? Pakken rolled his black eyes. Okay, Percy, can you tell me where Naruto is? Woof. The dog Nin was picked up by the scruff of its neck. Naruto whirled it around so that its eyes were focused on the ninja's furious ones. Naruto, Pakken said, still oblivious to the upcoming storm, did you talk a little tinkle break? No, you stupid dog. Naruto shook poor Pakken, who looked like he was going to die. I was squirming under you. Really? Arg. Before Naruto could stab a kunai down Pakken's throat, Percy held his arm back. Hey, calm down, he might have something important to tell us. Pakken nodded his head importantly. Kakashi got called back to camp. What? The genin set Pakken down. What do you mean? The dog Nin shook himself and some fur flittered down to the damp ground. Chiron sent him one of those I am thingies and told him, hey, what was it? Oh yes. The camp is under siege, something like that. Percy cursed and kicked up some of the mud. Siege, Pakken, I think Master Kakashi said siege. Oh, yes, that was it. It was about noon now, the sun beating down harshly. But the heat was affecting the trio. So Pakken continued, Kakashi told me to tell you that it is all up to you to save the furs. It's up to us to save the girls, Naruto muttered. He glanced back at Percy and turned to Pakken, tell him, it's under control. Percy opened his mouth to protest, but shut it quickly. Naruto's right, he thought. Bickering will get us nowhere. Of course, Pakken said, and bunched up the muscles in his back legs, getting ready to bound off. Oh, Naruto-kun, he said. If you took a potty break, you don't have to hide it. Listen you, Naruto dove toward the dog, but Pakken was gone. Percy bit his tongue to keep from laughing. He took a deep breath and said with as much seriousness as he could muster up, I guess it's just you and me. Naruto was up, dusting the mud off his jacket. Let me get one thing straight before we start this treaty. The ninja struggled a bit when he said treaty. After this, we're rivals again, Percy. Percy grinned and nodded, understood Naruto. Half-blood. Where's the boy? Adrakina snarled. She swung her iron cleaver, causing the campers to back off. Like we're ever going to tell you. Travis called, bravely. The monster's eye glowed evilly, then looks like we're going to do this the hard way. And she advanced. The helicopter gained altitude within the minute. Annabeth glanced down at the shrinking clearing and racked her brain. I need a plan and fast. Her knife was up front with that Impulsa boy and Sakura was also disarmed. It was just the two of them and the doors. That's it. The daughter of Athena edged closer to the handle of the helicopter's door. It was locked, but that wasn't what she had in mind. She slipped the bonds on the door handle and braced her foot on the door. She kicked as hard as she could, jerked her wrists back and the rope snapped. Hey, Annabeth heard Kelly say from the front, which was concealed with another door. What's going on in there? You better not be trying to escape. Knowing better, Annabeth didn't answer. Sakura was still unconscious, but her breathing was even. Rubbing her wrists, the daughter of Athena set to work untying the Kunoichis ropes. In a few minutes, Sakura's ropes were also undone. Looking out of the window, Annabeth could only see white. They were probably thousands of feet up in the air now. Too high for her to try anything drastic. In that thought, Sakura began to stir. What happened? She murmured as she stretched. The pink hair glanced at Annabeth, then looked around at the small space they were in. Oh Kami. She was fully alert. What's going on, Annabeth? Where's Naruto? What? She hissed back, I thought you could answer those questions. I don't remember a thing. Just a bright light and then, presto, I'm here talking to you. There was a clutter of items and a tiny crash. They heard Kelly curse and stand. Annabeth looked frantically at the ninja. We have to attack her, Annabeth said. Are you crazy? Last time I checked we were defenseless. The daughter of Athena got a glint in her eyes as she patted one of her front pockets. They didn't take everything away from me. Kelly dropped a glass. She was sitting up front with Doman when it happened. Lord Luke will be very pleased, she was saying. He has something in store for those two. Ah, Doman replied, his pale hands on the copter's wheel. He stared straight ahead into the massive clouds. The silence was a bit awkward, so Kelly spoke up again. Are you really the last of your kind? Yes, he answered bluntly. Oh, Kelly leaned forward and her elbow shoved the glass to the ground and it shattered. Great, she murmured angrily. She stood and stepped carefully over the glass. He'll get the trash bags. HN. When the Impulsa was out of Doman's seeing range, she let out a slight shiver. That guy wasn't much of a talker now, was he? The pale-faced boy sat rigid, his white hands on the wheel, red eyes squinted in concentration. Clouds floated by and they couldn't see a thing. Sighing, Kelly opened the door to the back. Now. Once the Impulsa stepped in the back, she felt something shove her to the ground. What the? Kelly tried to stand, but the invisible force gagged her with a foul-smelling rag that was used to clean the helicopter. Wemwo. Wemwo wufo watts. She screamed helplessly. Something smacked the back of her neck and it all went black. Sakura lifted up the unconscious monster up and threw her behind the back seats where numerous cartons and plastic bags had been forgotten. Well, that was a piece of cake. Annabeth shimmered into visibility beside her and dusted her Yankees baseball cap on her jeans, but Doman will notice if she's gone too soon. We'll need to take care of him too, Sakura agreed. She let chakra flow to her right hand, making it green. Yup, I think I have enough for another paralyzing jutsu. The copter jerked and the two girls fell on the ground. Annabeth held on the seat as she stretched up to see what was happening. The clouds were zipping past and there were less of them. The vehicle jerked again and she felt the copter dip down. We're landing. She said, horrified. Sakura was straining to stand as well. This is bad, and I mean very bad. The helicopter lost more altitude and Annabeth saw blue, a lot of blue, ocean water blue. But in a distance the daughter of Athena couldn't make out anything else. Because after about 50 yards, the rest of the ocean was shrouded in a thick fog. She could hear the water sloshing violently under them. They were at least 100 feet above the salty depths of the Pacific Ocean. But how the Hades did they get all the way to the Pacific in 3 hours? We have to jump. Annabeth finally said. Sakura shot her a look and the copter jerked forward again. Are you insane? That's suicidal. I don't know, Annabeth replied. Half of me just wants to jump into the ocean. How about the other half? It wants me to stay on the helicopter and see where it's headed. Annabeth pursed her lips and kept her gray eyes on the sea, but I think it's a sign from Poseidon. I think he wants us to jump. Sakura's eyes lit up. You mean Percy's father? Annabeth nodded frantically, and yet the voice that wants me to stay sounds a lot like my mom's. Her face fell into her hands. Sakura, what do I do? But before the Kunoichi could answer, she gasped. Further in the ocean was a green blotch. The blotch grew larger due to the helicopter's monster speed. It's an island. And it was. In 5 seconds flat the whole island came into view. It wasn't that large, but it was beautiful. Sandy beaches outlined it and a small forest followed just after, like a second layer. But right in the middle of the island was a marble water fountain. More to the right of it was a cave. The cave was surrounded by flower beds that supplied many varieties of flowers. Vases, dandelions, and a curious white one peeked through the soil. Although the island was immensely gorgeous, the fog that shrouded it and the single water fountain gave it a very lonely feeling. With one more violent altitude loss, the helicopter landed smoothly on the north side of the island on the sand. The engine was cut and the door handle twisted. Annabeth jammed the baseball cap back on her head and she was instantly invisible. Sakura stood on the far side, just as she did before, and held her breath. But instead of the door swinging open, the girls heard Doman's voice through the door. "Don't try, the copter's surrounded." And just to emphasize his point, a sharp gunshot was heard right outside. Doman opened the door and his smooth white face was smug. "Take off the hat and put your hands up." They did as they were told. Doman's face twisted into a smile. "Welcome to Ajija. Camp Half-Blood." The Drakina came at the campers, fangs bared. In a flash, Kakashi soared out of the sky, his Sharingan exposed and his lightning blade trailing behind him. "Owl mortal," the snake woman screamed, but it was too late. The electricity ripped through the monster as easily as celestial bronze could. Yeah, to make the story interesting, ninjutsu is now in effect on monsters. The elite ninja landed smoothly on his right knee and stood up, looking at the campers, who looked back in disgust and shock. The black markings on the Sharingan swirled absently, causing the campers to back off. But a burly girl with stringy brown hair stepped forward looking ready to kill. "I thought you weren't allowed here anymore, not you or your other freakish friends." A young, Hispanic boy also stepped forward, but he laid a hand on the girl's shoulder comfortingly. "Claris." Claris shoved his hand away. "Forget it, Chris, these things put the camp in danger, and we can't afford another lose." Her hot glare intensified. "They're not welcome here, none of them, they'll destroy camp for sure." Kakashi lowered his forehead protector over his red eye and ruffled his silver hair. "Look, I'm really sorry about what has happened over the past few days." Claris just glowered at him, but she didn't say a word. "But like it or not, us ninja are involved in this, your enemy is in cahoots with our enemy, so we don't have that much of a choice." "So that's it then?" Beckendorf called from the crowd. "You don't have much of a choice. If your enemy wasn't involved in all of this, you'd just leave Camp Half-Blood." Akasha's left eye closed. "I'm sure what we would've done if Orochimaru didn't get involved in all of this." A few murmurs crossed the mass of people. "If he didn't, we'd stay because it's our duty, and we'd stay because we'd have to because we want to." His eye opened and the elite looked almost sheepish. "We have to stick together as a group if we want to beat Kronos." "Well, we'd better start," Travis shouted. "More monsters ahead." They all turned and it was true, millions of monsters were advancing, hellhounds, Drakina, scorpions, spiders, cyclops, all heading toward Half-Blood Hill. An Asian-looking half-blood with an eye patch was leading the pack. He held a sword that was glowing blue. The sword sent a sudden chill through the party. That feeling," Claris whispered. Then her eyes widened. "That's the aura of Kronos." Everyone stiffened, but Kakashi broke the scared silence. "We have to pull together," he proclaimed, "for Camp Half-Blood." "I can't believe I'm agreeing with this guy," Claris murmured as she drew her sword. "Alright, have it your way, we'll fight with you, but only for the camp." Most of the campers looked at her in disbelief. Since when did she ever show any kind of care toward camp? They followed suit. "For Camp Half-Blood," they said in unison. The monsters were only a few feet away from the border now. The Asian half-blood held up a sword that carried some of Kronos' powers and held it up. White light blasted out of the sword's tip and the invisible borders shuddered and failed. "Brace yourselves," Claris yelled, "this is going to be rough." And the monsters entered camp. "Somewhere in Pennsylvania. Are you sure this is the way?" Naruto groaned. He and Percy were standing at the entrance of one of Pennsylvania's train stations. "Of course," the demigod replied, equally irritated, "it says to Wyoming." Naruto groaned again, "But that's like far." Secretly, Percy agreed. Wyoming was 6 states away. And with his ADHD that wasn't going to help. "I'm sorry we couldn't take a plane, but Zeus." "But nothing," Naruto said, "isn't he your uncle? Why would he want to blast his own nephew out of the sky?" Thunder rumbled in the distance and the ninja shut up. They boarded the train in total silence and the silence continued for about 10 miles until Percy spoke. He stuttered with his question because he was afraid of the answer. "Do you think they're okay?" Naruto broke out of his trance and scowled. "Of course. What do you take me for? I have complete faith in Sakura-chan." "How long have you guys known each other?" Percy asked. You, Sakura, and Kakashi I mean." The ninja had a faraway look in his eyes, like he was having a good flashback. "Well, I knew Sakura since the academy days, but the 4 of us came together when we were 12. 4. That was when Naruto's happy look vanished, that was when we had Sasuke with us." Percy cocked his head, curious. "What happened to Sasuke?" Naruto frowned at the demigod but then gave in. "Sasuke-cha. He was everything I wasn't, strong, popular and not to mention very talented with ninjutsu. I tried to be just like him when we were kids, but it never worked. So naturally I hated it when he was placed in the same ninja team as I was. It was me, Sasuke, Sakura, and Kakashi-sensei. That was when I came to realize that Sasuke and I weren't that much different from each other. Naruto now had his cerulean eyes blue as he continued, we really didn't have anyone at that time. Of course we had Team 7 but it wasn't the same. I didn't have any parents at all. Sasuke had his mother and father and the rest of the Uchiha clan until his brother killed them all. That was when everything went downhill. You see, when we were taking a promotion exam, that snake, Orochimaru taunted Sasuke, saying that he had the ultimate power. He left Sasuke with a curse mark. After that Naruto made a whistling sound and imitated a plane going by with his hand. Sasuke left us for power, the power to kill his brother, the power Orochimaru had. Percy sat quietly, imagining everything Naruto said. He looked away from Naruto as he said a little bit awkwardly, you didn't have to tell me that, Ino. Yeah, I know, but it feels good to have someone to share it with. Then he laughed. Percy looked over and the ninja stopped. Heh, Naruto continued, now don't lie Percy, since we're in treaty mode and all, what's it like to be a demigod? Percy smiled really small, then snorted, you have no idea, getting chased by monsters, being the subject of prophecies, ha. It's mayhem. But, continue, Naruto prodded. But I found so much. I found a home in Camp Half-Blood. I found friends, happiness. Even if I was always in danger it was worth it. To know that everyone is there with you, Chiron, Grover, Annabeth. That's kind of crazy though, huh? Before the genin could answer, a large zooming sound loomed closer. The two looked out of the train's window and saw a large black helicopter whirring above. Percy felt an odd tugging in his brain and in his heart. That's when it clicked. Naruto. Percy yelled ecstatically. What's going on? That's it. Annabeth and Sakura are in there. Percy pointed to the helicopter that was edging closer. Naruto looked skeptical. How do you know? I don't know exactly, but it's like an instinct, just like I knew a few years ago that Annabeth was alive in Mount Tam, I don't know how, I just know it. Naruto felt a weird compromise with Percy and he nodded despite himself. Okay, let's go for it. Without thinking, he yanked Percy by his shirt, opened the train's window and leaped up 50 feet into the air. The ninja landed on the copter's feet and held on tight. Percy swung up and sat down next to him. What the Hades was that? Naruto shrugged, you sensed your woman, I jumped, as simple as it gets. It only seemed a few minutes, but the next time Percy cared to look down, ocean was beneath. And in a few more minutes the island of Ajija came into view. Percy recognized it immediately and panicked, we have to get out of here, he told Naruto as the helicopter passed over the south beach. But we're so close. It doesn't matter. I sense monsters down there and getting caught won't help us any. Naruto growled, you're one crazy guy Percy. Then the two jumped. Naruto and Percy landed in the dense forest on the southern side of Ajija. They walked for what seemed to be a mile, and the ninja was getting a bit irritated, nice job Perk. We were so close to the enemy's hideout and you just had to be a big old chicken. This definitely not Luke's hideout, Percy replied calmly. Their headquarters are at Mount Tam. Naruto nodded sarcastically, yeah because this is so much like a mountain. His violent retort echoed through the trees and a few exotic birds fluttered away in fright. This is Ajija, Percy said trying to calm Naruto down, the island of Calypso. And Calypso is? The person who lives on this island. No duh genius, Naruto interrupted. Percy just rolled his eyes, they pushed through the thick branches, but it seemed like they were going nowhere, you didn't let me finish, Calypso is the daughter of the Titan, Atlas. And when her father was punished for siding with the enemy. Whoa. Naruto interrupted again, she's the daughter of this Titan guy right? An odd came from Percy. Then we are in the enemy's place. That's where a lot of people get it wrong, Percy said. Calypso doesn't have to be punished, it's what her father did, not what she did. She was punished for something she didn't do. The forest thinned as Naruto thought this through, then would she invite the bad guys in? Percy shook his head as if he was pondering that answer, I'm not sure, usually people can't find a Ajija they're just brought here, out of pure luck. Naruto was silent at first, and then the truth dawned on him, you were on Calypso's island. Percy turned a light shade of red, for only 2 weeks. How'd you get here? Well, it was after I got blasted out of a volcano. Forget I asked. There were only a few trees left and Percy could see a little bit. They were approaching the center of Ajija. The fountain sprayed quietly and no voices were heard. The cave loomed over the whole island 50 yards away and gave the center an ominous feel. Both of them pressed their backs against different tree trunks and gazed out. No one was there. But then something caught their eye. Something that hasn't been there before. A cage. What in the, Naruto murmured. Then came a frantic cry, Naruto. Naruto. Don't come closer, it's a, but the scream was cut off. The ninja's eyes widened, Sakura-chan. Loud rustles came from in front of them and 3 half-bloods emerged from the bushes, their swords drawn. The first had a mop of brown hair that looked badly gelled. His face was expressionless and he had odd gray eyes. The second was a girl with poofy, black hair and deep brown eyes. The third half-blood was severe looking. He had a scowl that seemed almost permanent and dirty blonde hair that was hanging in a curtain around his face. He was obviously the leader. "Stay where you are," the leader commanded. His voice was rough and deep. Naruto laughed and then stopped, "Like you guys are ever going to stop us." The boy with gelled hair spoke, quietly but deadly, "Oh, we won't stop you." "What do you?" But before Percy could finish, he felt a sharp cut in the back of his neck. He crumpled on the forest floor, and by the sound of Naruto's groan he was hit too. But before he blacked out entirely he heard the leader's voice say respecting, "Sir Sasuke." The voice of who seemed to be the mysterious Sasuke was velvety smooth, and yet there was a murderer's edge to it. "You didn't have to do that, Suigetsu Wolve knocked them out in seconds. But we want to be your apprentices." The girl said, desperately. "The only person you work for is Master Luke," Sasuke replied coldly. "And I work alone." That was when the demigod blacked out. In the center of Ajija, Sakura sat in the cage, near the fountain. It was big enough that she was able to stand and wide enough to let her pace. After the impulsive boy led them outside of the helicopter, Annabeth was seized by a Laestrygonian giant and was taken to see Luke. Sakura hadn't seen her since. When she heard two agonized groans, she jumped up to her feet. "Naruto." She screamed. And as she screamed, someone emerged from the forest carrying two unconscious bodies. The man's onyx eyes seemed so calm and his raven hair ruffled in the sudden breeze. "Sasuke," she whispered breathlessly. The missing nin kept a straight face as he replied, "Sakura, you've changed. So have you." The Kunoichi felt like crying, she missed Sasuke so much. And to see him again she was lost for words. But she saw Naruto's dead-looking body, and her happiness was replaced with pure anger. "What did you do to Naruto?" Sasuke smiled, but not friendly, more like sadistic. "Ah, just a poisoning jutsu I picked up from Master." Sakura snarled back, "Orochimaru. He was right, he did have power. Evil power." The missing nin's sadistic smile grew, "What's the difference?" Then with amazing speed he was right in front of Sakura's prison, and his eyes turned Sharingan. The tomo swirled. "You look beautiful, Sakura." The Kunoichi turned red then scowled, "I don't fall in love with a traitor." Sasuke's red eyes turned back to Onyx, and then he started off toward the cave. "Well, unlike you, your little friend is already in love with a traitor." "What are you talking about?" "I meant little Annabeth's crush on Master Luke." At this Sakura's green eyes widened. "Don't you dare use that against her." Sasuke looked back once more as he advanced toward the huge cave, too late. "What's this about Luke?" Annabeth was sitting in a chair, but her hands were free. She had them crossed in front of her, and her stormy gray eyes followed the son of Hermes as he paced in front of her. Calypso's cave was lighted dimly with a few candles. A dove-white bed was farther off in a corner, and there was a washing basin and a mirror against the right wall. Luke stopped his pacing and turned to face her, his new eyes burned gold, and he spoke in Chrono's icy tone, "I think you know Athenian. And you actually think that you can get that out of me?" Luke snarled and edged his face closer to the daughter of Athena. "What are you and your little friends up to?" Annabeth set her jaw stubbornly and spoke firmly, "I will never betray Percy like that." Luke looked infuriated, but then the fire in his eyes softened to a simmering flame. "I see," he whispered. Luke backed off and started pacing once again. "I never wanted to do this, Annabeth, but what are you talking about?" The Titan walked away to the white bed. He passed it and went further into the cave, where candles weren't glowing, where it was pitch black. Annabeth wondered if she should run, but something held her back. Something wanted to see what Luke had up his sleeve, she wanted to confront it. A sharp hissing came from the darkness, which made her rethink her choice, but it was too late to run now. Luke emerged from the cave's depths, a smug look on his handsome face. A few paces behind him appeared a slender, white-faced man with midnight black hair that hung to his stomach. The man grinned and licked his lips with a long snake tongue. He had yellow eyes with black slits as pupils and purple mascara that gave his ghastly face an even scarier accent. "Truth serum?" The man's voice flowed smooth and slick. Basically everything about this Titan ally was snake-like. "Just a bit if that's not a problem," Luke replied. The snake man laughed, "Mind to tell me what this is all about, Sir Luke?" "She knows," Luke said smoothly, "and we need to get it out of her." "Now about the serum." A new voice growled from behind Annabeth's chair, "Don't rush Orochimaru-sensei." Annabeth's eyes widened. Of course, so this was the Orochimaru in Sakura's stories. She looked behind her, but who was that? Then she saw Sasuke. The Uchiha was leaning casually against the mouth of the cave, Sharingan swirling evilly. "So this is Annabeth." Sasuke strolled toward Luke and Orochimaru, a frown plastered on his face. But her eyes weren't on his face, tucked under the man's arm was someone with jet black hair and a somewhat blank face. But she knew that behind those closed eyelids were sea green eyes. "Oh, Percy," she whispered as Sasuke threw the demigod on the dove-white bed. "You did come for me. How about the demon fox?" Orochimaru inquired, excitedly. The slits of his eyes widened as Sasuke pointed to the ceiling. "Up at HQ," he murmured carelessly. Then he looked at Annabeth again and pointed at Percy. That lug talks in his sleep, he keeps saying things like, Annabeth, he'll save you. And I'm sorry Annabeth. Made it hard for me not to kill him. Annabeth was ready to jump up and teach the Sasuke a lesson, but something was nagging the back of her mind, up at HQ. Demon Fox. What are they talking about? The serum? Luke said again, getting impatient. Orochimaru hissed soothingly at the Titan. Now Sir Luke, he said, I think I know of a more effective way of getting answers out of this beautiful girl. Luke's eye twitched, then he snarled, don't touch her. The snake man looked shocked, of course not. What kind of man do you think I am? At this, Sasuke snorted. Orochimaru scowled at him and sauntered over to the white bed and propped Percy up against the headboard. Then without warning he drew a katana from his clothes and pressed the metal to the demigod's neck. Annabeth gasped and stood. Percy. Orochimaru smiled, now you will tell Luke what he wants, and this sword doesn't slit your lover's neck. Annabeth clenched her fists until her knuckles turned white. Finally she conceded and sat down in the chair, tears threatening to fall. Fine, she whispered brokenly. He'll tell you what you want. But she was interrupted by footsteps falling softly from the darkness of the cave. A few more seconds and she emerged. A girl who was at least Annabeth's age, with flowing bronze hair and amber eyes. Her pale skin seemed to glow under the candlelight and she wore a flowing white satin dress. But even with her pretty face and appearance, she was frowning in Orochimaru's direction. What are you doing to Percy? She asked. Nothing my dear Calypso, Luke replied, sounding really impatient now, we're just using him for answers. The girl just drifted across the cave's floor as she made her way to the white bed. She sat down next to Percy and ignored Orochimaru, who growled but drew back the sword. Hi you, she whispered and stroked a stray strand of hair from Percy's face. Annabeth felt a fire in her heart, but she couldn't explain it. When the girl touched Percy, Annabeth felt mad, infuriated. But she didn't know why. And Calypso, where'd she hear that name before? Calypso stroked the side of Percy's face and Annabeth felt that burning again. This time, Percy stirred. Annabeth, he murmured softly and turned away from Calypso's hand. Calypso looked shocked, turned around, and locked eyes with Annabeth. A small smile flickered across her face, as if she was glad that the Athenian was there against her will. Annabeth just stared back stonily. Then Calypso drifted away. She stopped a few feet from Annabeth's chair and giggled, so you're the Annabeth Percy keeps sleep talking about. It's nice to meet you. And she held out her hand. Annabeth just glared back and didn't shake her hand, but her face felt hot. How many times had Percy talked about her in his sleep? Calypso held her white smile and dropped her hand. She straightened her satin dress, and Annabeth made out some of the images sewn lightly in the fabric. Silvery lining inscripted Mount Olympus and her island off the right. Then it clicked. Calypso. Ajija, she was the seductress that kept Odysseus on her island for 7 years. Annabeth spoke cautiously, Yar Calypso. Yes. The seductress. Calypso snarled in Annabeth's direction, just because of that little incident I had with Odysseus. 7 years, Annabeth protested, trying to keep in line, you forced him to stay in Ajija for 7 years. Then Calypso started to wail, I loved him. I loved him and he left me. The gods took him away. I never fell in love again. She stopped for a moment and glanced over at Percy, until I met him. Annabeth's eyes widened, Percy came to Ajija. Calypso swept her fingers under her eyes, even though no tears were present. Luke and Orochimaru were in the background scowling and very intolerable for all the talk. And then, he left too, he left for you. Annabeth felt like crying. Percy left for her? He went through all this trouble to save her too. Calypso stamped her foot in frustration, first Athena took my Odysseus away, and now a daughter of Athena takes my Percy away. Her amber eyes darkened and looked eerily like Chronos' gold ones. I'll have revenge on the gods, for taking my love away, and on you for taking Percy away. And on you for taking Percy away. Calypso looked really dark now. A snarl on his pale face, her amber eyes wide and blazing. Why you're insane, Annabeth said. Luke in the background looked really impressed with Calypso's vow to destroy the gods. You see, he said smoothly, every one of us has a different reason for the destruction of Olympus. The gods aren't to blame, Annabeth said boldly, it's you and your deeds, you made yourselves angry to the gods, all they did was try to bring justice to this world. Calypso rolled her eyes, you sound just like your mother, thinking you know everything when yet you know nothing. Don't insult my mother, Annabeth said calmer than usual. The night was falling and the candles shone brighter, illuminating most of the cave. It gave her a hopeful feeling for some twisted reason. Percy stirred in the corner and Calypso went over to the bed again, leaving Luke to continue in his speech. Don't you remember what the gods did to Thalia? He snarled. They saved her. They killed her, Luke said, they sent that Cyclops to destroy her. Annabeth shook her head, Luke's eyes were burning gold, he was so infuriated, and her comment would make him explode, but she didn't care. It's your fault, Luke, you suggested to go into the mansion. The gods didn't kill her, you did. Enough. Luke pushed the basin to the ground, splattering water on the cave's floor. He roared and smashed the basin to bits with his foot. The gods are evil. And you know it. Luke pressed his face so close to Annabeth's that she could smell his cinnamon breath. Join me in their destruction, he whispered icily. Luke's command sent shivers up Annabeth's spine. She felt like she cold refuse. I mean, it was Luke. Luke moved closer and their faces were centimeters apart. Annabeth's heart hammered against her chest and her breathing hitched. Well, he whispered again. Who do you choose? If Annabeth moved even the slightest, their lips would touch. I choose. In Annabeth's mind she pictured the two-faced god Janus and his two doors. Choose. Choose. This was it, her choice, the gods or the titans. But it was more than that, it was more than her brain's choice. It was also her heart's choice. Luke, dark, old friend, incredibly hot Luke. Or Percy, courageous, best friend, undeniably sweet Percy. I thought you loved me, Luke said softly, I thought you wanted to be with me forever. So what is your choice, Annabeth? Choose. Choose. Janus chanted in Annabeth's mind. Annabeth wasn't aware of it, but Percy was slowly awakening. He was fully conscious, but he kept his eyes shut. He listened to Luke croon to his Annabeth. Yes, his Annabeth, his and no one else's, never again will he let her go. He was also aware of Calypso sitting next to him, stroking his face. It shocked him that Calypso turned over to the Titan's side. Percy understood that she was alone, and even though he did leave for Annabeth, the island dweller was always in his thoughts. But not like that. He had a very close friendly bond with Calypso. But now he didn't think that she'd like that very much. He went back to eavesdropping on the two. Well. Percy could imagine Luke whispering the word velvety to Annabeth, trying to convince her. Deep, shallow breathing was heard. Percy wanted to jump up, knock Luke down, and make him pay for all the pain he made Annabeth go through. Luke, Annabeth said slowly. Yes. Percy imagined Annabeth sitting up straight and saying firmly, I will not betray the gods. But what she really said surprised him immensely. I don't love you, Annabeth said, I love Percy. She felt one of the imaginary doors in her head open. But she knew she made the right choice no matter what. Good thing Percy was unconscious so he didn't hear her bold confession. Luke twitched before answering. Brave, he mused. Behind the imaginary door in Annabeth's head was a dark tunnel. Why was she thinking about the doors now? But she wasn't thinking about them. This was her choice. And she was going to find out the consequence for choosing the one that she did. Luke slammed the back of his hand across Annabeth's face. Too brave. The monster emerged from the tunnel and engulfed her thoughts. I made the right choice. Annabeth chanted in her head as she forced back tears. You don't scare me, Luke, Annabeth whispered brokenly. Percy heard the confession and his heart fluttered, but when he heard the slap, and it took all of his willpower not to kill the Titan. Slowly he eased his hand into his pocket and his hand enclosed around the sand dollar. This time is as good as any. After Annabeth's last statement he jumped up and threw the sand dollar on the cave floor. Please work. Bam. The sand dollar exploded into a huge cloud of dust. Percy jumped off the bed and ran through the dust cloud desperately searching for Annabeth. He saw her standing from the chair looking confused and a little afraid. Luke was nowhere in sight and the son of Poseidon didn't care if Luke was right in front of him. Percy leaped and caught Annabeth's hand and pulled her forward. They didn't speak, they just needed to get off this island now. Percy uncapped Riptide and the faint glow of the blade led them through the dust cloud. They made it to the mouth of the cave and kept running. He saw Sakura's cage up ahead and he called to her, hey. Look out. He violently swung Riptide at the bars and much to Percy's surprise it worked. Sakura jumped up and followed the two as they jogged into the forest. Percy had no idea where they were going, just out of here was fine with him. Percy, Annabeth tried to say but Percy didn't answer. They reached the beach quicker than Percy expected. And what's more, there were no guards. Fishy, he said. Well, who cares? Annabeth replied, we just have to get out of here. But Sakura was reluctant. How about Naruto? She whispered. I'm sorry, Percy said, but right now we need to save ourselves. Sakura looked like she wanted to protest, but she just nodded weakly. The three dashed out into the open and made a beeline for the nearest boat. No guards ambushed them as Percy revved the engine, and soon they were off. The speedboat hummed as it tore through the Pacific Ocean, and an awkward silence hung over the three. Finally Annabeth spoke up, Percy, thanks for saving me. The son of Poseidon just stared out to the ocean. Percy? No answer. Fine, be that way, Annabeth declared stubbornly, I cold gotten out of there without your help. She crossed her arms and also stared out at the ocean. Sakura sat next to the Athenian and put a hand on her shoulder. Percy was worried sick about you, she told Annabeth. When we were leaving the campsite, I could tell he was thinking about you. And I bet that he would sacrificed his life for yours also. Annabeth turned to Sakura and the Kunoichi smiled. He really cares about you. When Annabeth turned back to try to talk to Percy again, he was watching them. Percy turned red and looked back to the front of the boat. He was such an eavesdropper. Annabeth slowly walked to the front of the long speedboat and sat at the helm next to Percy. "Look, seaweed brain," she started. "I'm sorry," they said in unison. And for the first time since their quarrel in the woods, they locked eyes. It felt really good to look in those eyes again. Green to gray and gray to green. A perfect match. "What are you sorry for?" Annabeth asked. Percy tore his eyes away from hers and looked down guiltily. "Everything," he whispered, then he looked at Annabeth again. "I'm sorry for being such a seaweed brain, sorry for always putting us in danger, and sorry for telling you to leave." "Hey, that was my choice," Annabeth said. "And it was the most unwise, stupid, and un-Athena-like thing I have ever done, but you saved me, and I'm so happy that I'm actually with you again." And with that, Annabeth closed her eyes, leaned in and caught Percy's lips in a passionate kiss. Percy's eyes were wide, but he responded by wrapping his arms around Annabeth's waist and pulling her closer, deepening the kiss. Annabeth smiled and put her arms around the boy's neck, and after a few more beautiful minutes they broke apart and started breathing heavily, their foreheads still touching. "I love you, wise girl," Percy whispered, stroking Annabeth's cheek. "I love you too, seaweed brain," she replied. And in the background was Sakura smiling broadly. But her heart tugged. Where was Naruto? Is he going to be okay? But for now she just watched the two lovers in each other's embrace as the boat sped off toward Camp Half-Blood. Time was different in Ajija. This is what Percy, Annabeth, and Sakura found out when the speedboat eventually reached the beach of Camp Half-Blood. Percy pulled the throttle, and the speedboat hummed to a stop. The three of them stepped onto the beach, and all was quiet, too quiet. "Is it just me?" Annabeth whispered as they walked up to the forest, "or is the camp quiet?" Percy shook his head. "I can't hear anything either," he replied. Then he remembered Pakin's words, "The camp is under siege." "Oh gods," he murmured and picked up the speed. Soon he was tearing through the forest, numerous thoughts running rampart in his head. We've been in Ajija for at least 2 days. How could the siege just have ended? "Percy?" Annabeth called. "Percy, where are you going?" By the sound of her voice she was right behind him. He slackened his pace by a millisecond and soon the girls were right beside him. "This isn't right," Percy said, vocalizing his thoughts. "We've been gone longer than this." The forest started to thin and they burst out into the cabin area and it was mayhem. Fallen campers lay on the grass, eyes closed, barely conscious. There were at least 2 who were well going to each comrade, shaking them with tears in their eyes. Kakashi was also there. He was standing over a camper, his face grim under the mask. Annabeth gasped, "Malcolm." She ran to the camper that Kakashi was leaning over and knelt by her half-brother's side, holding back tears and shaking Malcolm's limp body. "Malcolm," she whispered again, "please wake up, please." Annabeth felt like one of those people in the movies where the main character was losing someone that was very close to them, but this was real. Annabeth half expected Kakashi to put a hand on her shoulder and say, "I'm sorry, it's too late." But he didn't. The elite ninja have experienced too many scenarios like this to know that those words would only make matters worse. Tyron was also trying to find survivors, clopping up to each victim and checking their pulse. So far out of 12 people only half were lucky. But the campers were strong, they'll pull through. He saw the 3 teens come in through the forest and their shocked faces. He watched painfully as Annabeth's face welled up with tears as she ran to her brother's side. Too many lost, he thought. Then his spirits lifted when he saw 2 of the presumed dead campers start breathing. He galloped over and checked their heartbeats, they were going steady. Another thought crossed his mind, the will to live is strong in them. The other 2 teens walked across the battlefield. Percy went to Annabeth, who was grieving over her brother. Annabeth had many siblings, but she had a very close bond to Malcolm. Percy knelt next to the Athenian and rubbed her back, trying to console her. The daughter of Athena tried to keep her tears in, she had to keep it together and she couldn't just break down like this. But in time she gave in. Annabeth sobbed quietly and turned to Percy, who hugged her. Meanwhile, Sakura was healing as many people as she could, ignoring the disapproving looks she got from the other campers. She knew she couldn't start a heart and was focusing on the surface wounds of the campers who were barely conscious. Sakura felt her energy draining from her as she healed her 5th camper. The other 4 were receiving drinks from Pollux, Castor's twin, who was one of the few campers to survive the siege without getting severely injured. Sakura healed 4 more before she felt entirely fatigued. Kakashi walked up to her and said, "The other 2 are at the big house, and we need you there." She nodded, feeling a bit dizzy. The elite cocked his head to one side. "I think I should accompany you before you faint on the spot." She nodded gratefully and accepted his offer. Once they reached a big house, Sakura saw Percy and Annabeth sitting around the fireplace, Chiron speaking to them in soft tones. The 3 looked at the 2 people that entered, and Chiron beckoned them closer. "I heard what happened," the centaur whispered sympathetically when the Kunoichi was seated. "I'm sorry," he finished. Sakura shook her head. "There's no need for that," she replied. "Naruto can fend for himself for a while." But you can't just leave him like that, Annabeth protested quietly, you can't leave someone you care about because you don't know what could happen to them. She thought about her half-brother once more and her voice broke. But Annabeth forced herself to stay calm and collected. Tyron changed the subject gently, the prophecy he said slowly, we need to know what parts of the prophecy have happened so we can be able to help Naruto more. Percy went through the prophecy and then sighed in disgust, all of them happened, except for the lines about the mountain in which we never rested. Annabeth spoke up, yes we actually did. We did. Percy, did you ever wonder how Luke survived that fall off of Mount Tam? The son of Poseidon's eyes widened, you don't think? Sakura also seemed to understand for she said, you know now that I think about it, the top of the cave in Ajija was shrouded in mist. That's it then, Annabeth said. Ajija is Mount Tam. Tyron clocked relentlessly, but a hero never finds Ajija twice. Chronos did, Percy reminded the centaur, so that means that there is a way. He stood up. Percy? Annabeth asked also standing. The two ninja followed suit. Where are you going? The son of Poseidon looked back, I think it's time to call on Lord Apollo. Thanks for watching.